Welcome, everybody. It is that time of the week. It is time for your weekly sit rep. It is October 26th, and this is sit rep resistance, guys. It's good to be back. It's been a few weeks since we've been live, and I'm here with my brothers. I got Daniel down here. Daniel, how you doing, brother?
It's been too long. I feel like it's been absolutely forever since we've actually got on here to chat live face to face. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we got Sean Griffin with us from Kingdom and Context and Kingdom Castles. Going, Sean.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for having me back or having me on, and I hope you guys are doing well. I got to meet Daniel in person this past weekend at Flattoberfest in South Carolina, and I got to meet you in person last year at Take on the World. But Daniel, you weren't there, were you?
I was, yeah, I was.
I apologize. I don't remember. Did we meet? Did we talk?
We started having a short conversation, and then someone walked up and said, "How do I convince my wife that the Earth is flat?" And so it kind of
Okay.
derailed the subject a
I
little.
apologize. Last year at Take on the World, I don't think I had like until I went back to the little barracks rooms that we had. I
Yeah,
didn't have like a moment to breathe. Like everyone just kept coming up to me, and which was very unexpected. And I was trying to adjust rapidly, so I apologize if I don't remember us starting a conversation there.
it's
Um,
all good.
but yeah, it was good to hang out with you and go to dinner, and appreciate you helping me out at the booth. So we had a table at Flattoberfest, and we got to talk about the Investigating Babylon series. Did a presentation on that, so it was interesting. We also got to meet Josh Keefe from Founded Earth Brothers. He was there, so it was pretty awesome. And Matthew Beavers was there from Back to the Covenant, so it was cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got
cool
to
to
see
meet all those guys.
quite a few different updates from Rick Hummer was there, and he was there with Mark
Yeah.
Sargent, and they were running around, and I got to see some of their video clips that he was doing. So it was pretty
Yeah,
pretty
I didn't
interesting.
really because I got sick. I didn't get a chance to talk to like all the other presenters for the most part. I got to say hi to Witsit Gets It, Austin Witsit for a few minutes, and I said hi to Mark Sargent. But then lots of people were talking to him too. So like, and I was on my way out the door. But yeah, it was a good event. I think it went smoothly.
Yeah,
But Daniel, you stayed longer than I did. Did Sunday go smoothly?
I only went back for just a short little bit of time, just to wrap up a few things. But like I said, yeah, I wasn't feeling too good that day either. So it was nice, and my wife was in town as well, so we got to spend some time together and a little bit extra time for her birthday weekend that she was able to get away without the kids. So we made sure we took advantage of that.
so how was the process of taking 24 videos and merging that down into what, a 2 hour presentation?
Yeah, I do want to big shout out to Karen B. I think I went over a little bit on my time by like 20 minutes, but it ended up being like 2.5 hours almost. But it was tough, man, because I just felt like I was mentioning things but not really being able to explain them, But if I didn't at least mention them, there was no segue to the next thought, and of course to the conclusion, which is something that a lot of people are not. I mean, and just a lot of people have no clue how you get to that conclusion unless they hear all that build up, which is why it was 21 episodes. And I'm doing an additional 21 episodes with the 42 series to expound even further on all those things mentioned, all those ideas from history and scripture and science. And so it's just so much information. It's like trying to create a short cliff notes of the biblical story from Genesis 11 to Revelation 22.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty tough.
plus explaining the origins of the Nephilim pre-flood and Azazel pre-flood. So I guess it's truly almost all the way back to the beginning. It was tough. It's tough.
Yeah, yeah.
It was.
Is
Oh,
that
sorry.
published
It was
anywhere?
chock full of scripture, though. I really appreciated that you were able to put that much scripture into it, not just touching on the concepts themselves, but actually being able to make sure that was a big part of the condensed version was the scripture backup to it. I appreciated that.
I just love the
Yeah.
fact that you're able to go into like this is more of a secular, flat Earth conference, and go in there and talk biblical scriptures with these people, and then you're accepted, and I'm sure that brought a lot of conversations your way.
Yeah. Afterwards, we had some interesting conversations about, what ideas were sparked. I mean, it was kind of funny after the first break because I did like an 1 hour and then we took a break and I did another hour. After the first break, first hour, I went to the restroom and guys like immediately came into the restroom after me to ask me questions and wanted to pitch ideas at me. And I was like, you know, It's like, all right, I appreciate we're all excited, but let's remember our bathroom etiquette here. You know what I mean?
You park in the stall right next to you, like,
Yeah,
hey, did you forget
it's
the
like,
bro code?
yeah, don't talk to a dude when he's trying, let's just remember bathroom etiquette. We can talk outside. Anyway, but yeah, it was fun overall. Everyone was real cool. And yeah, I think it was interesting that of all the crowds out there, that particular crowd, I think they probably the most likely to hear new information like that can seem very much fringe as far as never heard before kind of stuff, and not immediately dismiss it, but actually take a moment and be like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder how he came to that conclusion. Here's given all the evidence for it. That's interesting. I might have to look at it myself. I don't think anyone came up to me to just say that's stupid and I immediately dismiss it. So I think it was, to me, it did spark some unique conversations, and I was very pleased that we weren't there was no ridicule, if I could put it like that.
No tomatoes were thrown.
No, no, there was not. But I know that there was some gentlemen there that do not like the Bible. So that was where I was thinking it would be interesting to see their reaction. And everyone's chill, everyone's cool. So I thought that was great.
One of the cool things I wanted to get into before we actually got into what we're talking about, our main topic today, since we have Sean here, is Sean recently came out with a Kingdom in Context app that is now approved for iOS and Android. Oh, it's blurred out.
You can see it.
It's because you're
You
green
can see it.
screen.
That's funny.
Here, let's try it. Let's see if I can do it. So it's Kingdom in Context. It's got a whole bunch of cool stuff on it. There you go. And it has Take on the World TV on there. And that's actually what's kind of funny is he updated it before, as we were about to go live. And I actually got the notification from Kingdom in Context before I got it from YouTube. So you will be able to go and click on your favorite, like West Blaze, Parable in the Vineyard. Trying to think who else is on there.
We are expanding the Kingdom Crew section where it has other YouTube presenters down there for the. It's only got 5 slots right now, but we're going to expand it and put more people on there in the future. Just one step at a time, one build at a time.
Yeah, and I think for what you're doing right now, I saw that you just put something up there about a fleece blanket, Kingdom in Context fleece blanket giveaway going on right now.
Yeah, we're actually for everyone that has the app downloaded and actually puts your email in, because there's a place right below the videos to put your email in on the home screen of the app. So put in your email so that way you get notifications. And you go into your settings. Once you submit the email, you go into your settings. At the bottom of your settings, you'll see your email below notifications there, and it'll be the one that you put in. That's how you know that it logged your email correctly. And if you change your email, you'll see the new email logged in the settings, same place. In the settings, you can also change your tribe icon as well as your username if you want. So that's kind of a unique part about the app, is that when you actually sign up for it, you can't really see my app. Hang on a second. I have an idea. How about this? There you go.
There it is.
So you can actually choose your tribe, what tribe of Israel that you want to be associated with for your user. So I didn't want people to be able to upload their own user icon, because people can like upload inappropriate pictures. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And this isn't like a full-on social media. This is just a ministry app. So I thought, why not just give them a chance to understand how ancient Israel was integrated as a community, and each tribe usually was dominantly responsible for a certain sector of community as far as the economic stuff that goes. And so, like, for example, we have the tribe of Manasseh is associated with livestock, the tribe of Issachar was construction, the tribe of Judah was business, that kind of stuff. So I try to make it fun. You can choose your tribe, you can change your tribe at any time, as well as your username. And then we also, when we upload new videos, you get them directly notified to you. They'll go on the top banner here of the carousel, and then as well as new articles that I may write, if you want to read articles and everything. But we're doing a giveaway right now, so make sure you put your email in the home screen so that you can register for this queen size fleece Kingdom in Context blanket. It's wintertime. It's getting cold. People need a blanket to snuggle with.
You're already getting questions in the chat about where they can buy one.
Well, I mean, they're already on our Teespring.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, there's 8 different colors to choose from. They're already on our Teespring, but we want to give one away because it's like it's almost like a $60 value. So we want to give it away to somebody that's already signed up for the app and because I'm going to choose from all those emails on November 17th when I do my second episode of the 42 series. I'll announce the winner of the fleece blanket at that time.
Awesome. Yeah, there's
Shout
a
out to
lot
my
of
tribe of Benjamin peeps for all you
Yeah.
Lennonites out there. Come on, show your
I went
linen.
with the tech side. I was like, man, I should go with Dan, but then I saw that the tech was it uh, Ephraim was it
For the tech, for
for the tech one?
technology.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think,
just saw the tech. I'm like, well, that's where I'm at. So
yeah, Joseph and Ephraim is for technology,
yeah,
and Simeon is media. And it's just fun, or Simeon's energy and Naphtali's media. It's just for fun, guys. Someone else was asking me, how do I find all the people of the tribe that I chose? And I'm like, guys, it's just for fun. Now, here's the cool thing. We are going to do a fellowship finder that we have coming soon. That's what it says, coming soon there. That's actually being built right now. The developer's working on that right now to get a universal map fellowship finder that I can give that code and that API to other ministries to put on their website or to put onto their app as well. And that way, from whichever ministry you come to that map, if you upload your information for the fellowship finder, you can see everyone, right? So you don't like if you go to right now, there's a fellowship finder that a lot of people have used in mutual acquaintance communities. It's the 119 fellowship finder for 119 ministries. But there's other people that may not watch 119 ministries. They may watch Take on the World TV, but not 119 ministries. And they want to be a part of a fellowship finder. And if they sign up for a separate one, then that information is not on the 119 ministries map. You'd have to sign up for a whole bunch of separate fellowship finder maps. I'm trying to create the code to have one map and then give that code for free to other people to use and install on their site or their app so that we can all share that information together. And then we can all have a mutual fellowship finder as that grows throughout the years, no matter which ministry you follow on YouTube or which of the many ministries that are a part of Take on the World TV.
yeah.
We all can see the same map.
And from talking to you, Sean, you have a lot of more things that you want to add to this app as things come. We'll kind of leave some of those for surprises. Get the app, guys, and then keep an eye out for the updates because Sean has a lot of really cool ideas to build community, even though a lot of us are spread out across the country and across the world, to keep in touch, to do different things and bond in community. Well, the technology's there. The enemy uses it for evil, but God can use it for good. So,
Yeah.
I love to see that we're taking the steps to move in the right direction to utilize what we have at our fingertips and stop playing like we need to we're not what do you call them the old pilgrims and stuff. We we can still use some of this technology and push the kingdom forward. So I love it. It's awesome. I really applaud you for getting that put together, Sean.
Yeah.
Hey, did you mention that it's free?
It is free. Yeah. You
Yeah,
can download it iOS, Apple Store, Google Play for Android. It's free. And just another thing for the Fellowship Finder, ministries can upload their location as well. So in addition to, there's no there's no signifier that says because you've chosen a username and you put in your PIN code to get into the KIC app that you can only put up one location on the Fellowship Finder. So you can put in many, like if a part of a ministry and you have a business and you want to put in your personal address as well, you can do that. And so we made it to where, you can put in ministries and have those, like if you have a fellowship that you do, a Sabbath fellowship at some park somewhere, you can put that there if you like. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use it.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and in the future, it's going to be integrated with Good Land Ideas and different stuff. And as far as being able to connect for businesses and being able to see which tribes, do which type of businesses. So it'll be fun. We're building it.
But let's get started here and let's start talking about what I think everybody wanted to come and see. And this is something that you've been talking about again for quite some time with this investigating Babylon. So Babylon was the kingdom, but we're going to talk about the ruler of that kingdom, where he kind of came to power, and this is Nimrod, what I dubbed as the king of ruin, right? And there's a lot of information that we get about Nimrod from extra biblical sources, and we get some from the biblical sources in Genesis 11, and then we get some random things that kind of allude to him throughout the text, and then we see him. From what we have observed in the text, is we see him popping back up in Revelation. So there seems to be this ongoing story where this guy keeps popping up. Is that what you're seeing, Sean?
Yeah, especially, with the Tower of Babel, I know Genesis 10 is a boring chapter for a lot of people, but it's super relevant. It introduces and sets up the story, if of all the children of Shem, Ham, and Japheth that go out and do stuff, and one of them is this Nimrod character.
Yeah.
So it's pretty important because not all those characters have a role at the end of the story, but this particular character is unique. So
Yeah.
he's definitely someone to talk about.
And with what we're talking about with Nimrod, for those of you who don't know, I suggest you go start reading the Bible from the beginning. But there are a lot of circulating stories historically from other cultures and other religions that kind of point to this same character all the way back. We see this with like Sumerian texts and Greco-Roman texts, right? We're seeing this same character like kind of alluded to by his character attributes, and some of the things that he did were attributed to all of these other characters like Gilgamesh and Osiris and any other ones that I didn't get off the top of my head there.
I'm going to be talking about this in the 42 series, but Hammurabi.
From
A
is
lot of
that
people.
from Vedic texts?
No, it's from the Babylonian, the laws of Hammurabi.
Okay.
So a lot of scholars that are even in seminaries will unfortunately make a horrible statement in seminaries, and I've specifically spoken to people who've been at certain seminaries that heard this and attest to this, is that many quote unquote scholars slash professors at seminaries will lecture and say that the Hammurabi law codes of ancient Babylon, of ancient Chaldea, were the inspiration for Moses to write the law of God.
Hmm.
Oh, I know.
Oh
I
man.
know. It's atrocious theological statement, but especially for someone that professes to be a believer in the God of the Bible, in Yahweh. But that's what they say, and it's hilarious to me because I'm sitting there going, you're literally accrediting the wisdom of God in Scripture given through angels to Moses, his verified prophet, to the first king of Babylon, one of the quote unquote wise sages. And I'm actually going to talk about that later, as far as the famous wise sages of ancient Babylon, of whom Nimrod was in that mix, and he was, because he had many names. And so this is what I would attribute from all the research that the Hammurabi character was a part of that, because many of the Greek philosophers, they just spoke about the Babylonian sages and the Greek sages that were their counterparts, that they're their translated counterparts in Greece, just to say simply that they weren't truly wise men, they were just very shrewd men who knew law. And I'm like, oh, the first lawyers. That makes sense. They would abuse the law and oppress the people. And so, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Nimrod was known as like a great hunter before the Lord. Was that one of the titles that we get biblically?
Yeah, and in the Septuagint, in Genesis 10:8, it says that he became a Gibborim, mighty hunter before the Lord. So there's, some people think that means that he hunted giants. Other people think that it just means that he became a mighty man and commanded his own armies, because it talks about the beginning of his kingdom, and then it lists off several cities. And I think that that's interesting. I tend to think it's probably a good description for both, to be honest, because there were giants in that generation, of the different kingdoms that he would have had to go out and acquire to come under his control. So if typically the giants were the strong men of the kingdom, as we see that tradition still carried on in the days of Goliath in 1 Samuel 17, over 1,000 years later, then that would make perfect sense, that he would have to be considered a giant hunter. You know what I mean? As well as he goes and takes over different city states and adds to his kingdom to create the first empire of Babylon. That's why he's considered the first great king of Babylon, which was an empire, not just a city.
I'm trying to remember. There was a story, and I can't remember because this has been so long ago since I studied this, but I don't remember if it's extra biblical text or if this is found in secular understanding. But there was something that alluded to Nimrod being the one who initiated the first Egyptian pharaoh. This guy used to be like he was, I guess, this guy who was the first pharaoh was he was creating funeral, like, basically setting up this whole funeral thing, and became very rich. And when Nimrod came into town, he lavished him, and he was very appreciative of Nimrod. And Nimrod dubbed him as the first pharaoh. Do you remember? Do you remember, know what I'm talking about, or where that was at?
It's in Jasher.
Okay, it is in Jasher. Okay, I wasn't 100% sure, but yeah. So it talks about that Nimrod actually, this is post the Egyptian dynasties, and that actually he kind of is the one that dubs this guy as the Pharaoh. And the Egyptians, thousands of years later, are worshiping these Ra characters as deities and gods, and this all stems from Nimrod. Just going, hey, you did a good job here. I'm going to give you some power and prestige.
Would you like me to read what Josephus thought about Nimrod as the first king of Babylon, and
Yeah, absolutely.
how he actually formed the empire in the days of the propagation of Noah's sons off the boat and that whole mentality? He's got some interesting things to say. I know some people don't like Josephus, but if nothing else, it's an interesting perspective. And I don't see personally how he doesn't, his statements in the Antiquity of the Jews about this topic doesn't seem to favor any one side over another. It doesn't seem to shade the information in favor of anybody. So that's why I'm not afraid to read it and look at it, at least consider it. But this is from Josephus in Antiquity of the Jews. I think it's chapter 3. He says, now the sons of Noah were 3, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, born 100 years before the deluge. These, first of all, descended from the mountains into the plains and fixed their habitation there, and persuaded others who were greatly afraid of the lower grounds on account of the flood. And so were very loath to come down from the high places to venture to follow their examples. Now, the plain in which they first dwelt was called Shinar. God also commanded them to send colonies abroad for the thorough peopling of the earth, basically to, spread out on the earth and multiply, that they might not raise seditions amongst themselves, but might cultivate a great part of the earth and enjoy its fruits after a plentiful manner. But they were so ill instructed that they did not obey God, for which reason they fell into calamities and were made sensible, and by experience, of what sin they had been guilty. For when they flourished with a numerous youth, God admonished them again to send out colonies, but they, imagining the prosperity they enjoyed was not derived from the favor of God, but supposing that their own power was the proper cause of the plentiful condition that they were in, they did not obey God. Nay, they added to this and their disobedience to the divine will this suspicion that they were therefore ordered to send out colonies, because if they were divided, they might be more easily oppressed. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like the lunacy of that rebellious mindset. And in chapter 4, verse 2, he goes on to say, now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe their prosperity to God, as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government to tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence of his power. He also said he would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. Now the multitude was very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod, and to esteem it a piece of cowardice to submit to God. And they built a tower, neither sparing any pains nor being in any degree negligent about the work. And by reason of the multitude of the hands employed in it, it grew very high, sooner than anyone could expect. But the thickness of it was so great, and it was so strongly built, that thereby its great height seemed to be viewed to be less than it really was. It was built of burnt brick, cemented together with mortar made of bitumen, that it might not be liable to admit water. When God saw that they acted so madly, he did not resolve to destroy them utterly, since they were not grown wiser by the destruction of the former sinners, but he caused a tumult amongst them, producing in them diverse languages, and causing that through the multitude of those languages they should not be able to understand one another.
Well, yeah. That's all.
It's
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
wild.
I like Josephus from the standpoint of historical documentation from what they were perceiving these
Yeah.
stories from a Second Temple perspective. So definitely is interesting to add to what we already know about Nimrod. And to me, I mean, he was kind of the epitome of a rebellious spirit. And not only that, but he was prideful. He was standing in the face of God. And some texts talk about this idea that they shot arrows up into the sky to try to wound God, and he confused them by sending arrows with blood back down. There's all these crazy stories about this guy that like literally was standing up there shaking his fist at God, saying, "Come down here and fight me." It's crazy.
That's what some people believe the obelisk is about, is that it's like an arrow pointed at heaven.
Yeah.
and that's why you'd see spires or large spear-like, sharp-pointed objects on the top of large buildings, as an homage to Nimrod, who is assaulting heaven,
Yeah.
the rebellious one. Yeah.
And we see these homages to Nimrod. I mean, a lot of people at this point are already aware of, you know, the pagan nature of modern holidays, but it goes deeper than just, you know, the homage that they pay on these you know, pagan holidays. They're it's all over architecture. It's all over, and this is not just, you know, in the Middle East. We see homages to Nimrod all across the world. At
Yeah.
the time, he made an impact on the entire world while he was here.
Well, yeah, think about the story, you know, whether it's from Josephus's account or Genesis or Jubilees or whatever, the story itself, I mean, he's the first king that changed, he's controlling the government, becoming tyrannical as a result, controlling all the people of the same language at that time. And they had all gathered together to help with this construction project. That means that once they're dispersed, they all remember who he is. They just can't speak the same language. So I don't know what they thought of him. That's the part that I want to see when we get to the resurrection. That's the part of the story that I think would be a fascinating movie, is from the account of him drawing people together to start the project. Jubilee says it was a 42-year construction project. So that's a lot of time to solidify your dominance as a leader, to get your loyalty from the people, and to work into an entire mindset of a generation, both of the leading generation and their children, your control, you know, your brainwashing of them and what you're trying to do. And they're already worshiping, I didn't read this part, but you know, they're already worshiping Jupiter, Zeus. They're already worshiping Satan, at the tower. Like, that was already part of it. They were worshiping Satan before they got to the tower. So there's a lot of things going on there. And it's not like Nimrod and the idea of the tower and him beginning this kingdom with Babel was just a brand new idea. It was an evolution of disobedience, if I could put it like that.
Yeah.
And this is what it culminated to very quickly. But it wasn't like it was just out of nowhere, oh, suddenly we're just going to do this thing and be mad at God. Like, it wasn't. So that means that the devil already got his hooks into Nimrod as a young man, and into his cousins and their second cousins, you know what I mean? That whole generation of the great grandchildren of Noah. And can you imagine Noah's heart having to witness this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, this is why I think Jubilees chapter 7 mentions this part where it says Noah saw that his grandsons were now being overcome by sins and led into all types of disobedience. So he started to enjoin, which means to fervently teach his children the commandments that he knew of God. And because he was like, oh no, it's happening again. You know, it's like we're going off the rails again. Like, let's try to round them up. Shem, Ham, Japheth. Let's try to round them up again. This is getting crazy. And who knows what kind of, like, because they're already doing, you know, genetic manipulation at that point. They already got giants reappearing, which means they are not only understanding, to me it means they're super smart, but they're picking up things quickly. They're understanding knowledge shared and taught to them, because they didn't have all these distractions like TV and public school. And yes, I said that they didn't have the distraction of public school that gets them thinking on all these other little matters that have nothing to do with the real world. Imagine training up a child as he's running around your feet and you're building the tower and you're teaching him advanced, you know, architecture as you go. By the time he's 12 or 14, he's ready to build something himself. You know what I mean? Like, this, it's just naturally picked up if the children are there watching. And I think this is fascinating. The whole breakdown of like how they got to the point of collaboration amongst the descendants of the sons of Noah, to ultimate rebellious affront to God, to where God had to step in. And it says, you know, in Jubilees and in other places that the place is called Overthrow because God overthrew the tower, which I'm guessing means he just, like, it either fell over, a part of it. I know that Jasher claims a third of it burned. So it's interesting to see how it talks about how God came in and got involved, but like, what's that transitionary moment between like things going well and them all being in one accord to suddenly there's a problem and there's discord and there's fighting. And then because the people, they still walked away worshiping Nimrod and Satan as the ultimate authorities in that pantheon. And I would say Hades and Hermes. as the one of the top trinity of the evil trinity. Like they still walked away respecting that hierarchy of authority.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to me. And
I
it
think
could just simply be because the practices of Babylon are so enticing to the flesh, and I love, there's a comment that this lady Tracy, dear sister Tracy, made a few minutes ago, and she was saying that from what I just read about how the sons of Noah, they came down the mountain and they were living in the plain of Shinar, and then trying to encourage their extended family to come live in the plain of Shinar too. Like, it's okay, God's not going to flood us again, because that's what God promised Noah. I'm not going to flood you again, right? Here's the bow. I'll never do this again. And so then they're trying to encourage people. It's okay. We can live in the lower lands. He's not going to flood us again. It's all right. And she said, I guess in response to what I read from Josephus, saying that God wanted them to send out colonies and repopulate other lands. And she's like, God's been calling us out of Babylon forever, all the way back to that moment right there.
Right.
Like, you're in the plain of Shinar where Babylon got built, and before you started that, he's trying to call you out of Babylon a long time ago. It's a great point, sister.
Yeah, and I think too, when we're looking at this whole understanding of Babylon and this separation, we've seen this before. That you have everything that happened on the pre-flood, right? And then again, it's almost like with the stories and everything they may have heard from Noah being passed down or whatever. I think this like Gnostic understanding that we have today, that we see in quote unquote Luciferianism, or this Gnostic Satanism that's out there now, where they say that God is the bad guy and Satan is the like not the redeemer, but he's the one that set mankind free. I think this was the ideology of Babylon, because they literally could see the evidence of God's destruction of the earth. And then they're like, oh well, yeah, but Zeus will save us. He's the guy that was in the garden that broke us free from this, tyrannical God Yahweh or whatever. And I think that's where we start seeing this demiurge, understanding of this tyrannical God that is trying to impose laws, and we can be free and united, and we can challenge him and take him on because we have Lucifer, Satan, Azazel, Gadriel, whatever. And he's the one that set us free. He's for us, right? I think that comes from that Babylon understanding, and it's made its way all the way up to where we're seeing it resurge again. I think it's always been there. It's been bubbling under the surface, but now it's almost mainstream, where our TV shows, our movies, and things like that still push this agenda of the good guy is always really the bad character, and the guy who has all the power is always the bad guy. And they're flipping the whole ideology of God on its head to give the adversary more power and prestige than the guy who actually created everything, or the being that created everything.
Yeah, it's I always joke that Satan is the first victim. Like, he's the first guy being like, oh, I'm just trying to help. Why you coming at me like I'm the bad guy? I'm just trying to help you. Don't oppress me by just trying to share truth with you. He's just always wants to put himself in a defensive light. That's why, with respect, I haven't asked you gentlemen's views on this particular book, but with respect to anyone watching, we did cover the book of Adam and Eve in season 3 of Honor of Kings, and we laid out some very strong theological reasons why I would never consider that actual scripture.
Sure.
And one of those is the fact that it makes Satan a victim, and it makes him the good guy. Forget the eschatology of when he was sent to heaven or when he was sent down to the earth or not, even though that's incongruent with scripture. It's still the whole premise of it. The whole subtext of the whole story of that particular book makes Satan the victim.
Yeah,
and I think that's
devil.
Say what?
Sympathy for the devil. It's a terminology we use.
That's it's a very subtle trick. When you try to, even when you're telling a story, and you may tell how the devil tried to tempt somebody or tease somebody, or the devil was just arguing for what was due him, it still puts him in a light where he's somehow being treated wrongly, versus what I would say we should believe is the creator of heaven and earth is a wonderful.
All right. Well, that was a great conversation, guys. We'll see you next week. Oh man, I'm glad everybody is sticking around, guys. I'm so sorry for that. This has happened once before when we were deep into talking about the enemy and his territories, and then all of a sudden YouTube just goes and shuts us off. So we are back. Sean was just finishing up on his conversation, or what he was talking about, and we pretty much forgot what we were talking about, so we're going to have to go somewhere else with this. I think I was asking you, Sean, about Satan, or not Satan, Nimrod, how he became a Gibborim, and there's different perspectives on it, but then we kind of see that if he became a Gibborim, if he was becoming a Nephilim, right? If he was becoming something that was unresurrectable, then he would have become an unresurrectable evil spirit, as what it talks about in Enoch, correct?
Yeah, this is where I've tried to make a slight distinction with the types of Nephilim that arise. And I know some people have tried to dig into the Hebrew to say that Numbers 13:33, the word Nephilim is spelt different than Genesis 6. Um, it seems to be the Nephilim created before the flood were a result of the tampering, the pharmakia, as well as the unclean spirits laying with the women, versus the Nephilim after the flood seem to be, just from my research, they seem to be just a genetic manipulation, no angels mating directly with women. It seems to be, which would make more sense in my understanding of why we see that passage in Genesis 10:8 referencing Nimrod to, became a Gibborim, right? Or began to become, as some of them are translated, some texts are translated. So it's interesting. I also think, to me, with my research into the Egyptian history, there seems to be some corroboration there as far as the storyline for Nimrod, whom the Egyptians called Osiris. Osiris is a Greek transliteration from the word Ashur. Ashur was one of the names for Nimrod, who's the main patron deity over the city of Nimrod in Babylon. So, and in Assyria. So there's linguistic connections there, as well as historical connections for the story of Nimrod being someone that he basically became the god of the underworld and replaced Anubis. So Osiris was the Egyptian version of Nimrod. He overtook, I don't want to say that the right way, like Rob basically used to have Anubis as the god of the underworld, and then he said, all right, well, now it's going to be Osiris, but there's still the three pantheon of top trinity, evil trinity. So it's interesting that the Egyptians claim that it was the Djed, this little specific pillar thing that looks like a transistor, that gave Osiris's mortal flesh immortal qualities. So if that's the case, then that means he would be could be why he's the only god in that ancient pantheon that is promised to be resurrected and come back onto the earth, because that means in that case he would have been made like a pre-flood Nephilim, to be an actual unclean spirit that doesn't die, or doesn't, how do I say this, doesn't die in the same way that normal mortal man dies, where we then go to Sheol, and then instead they're like normal mortal man, when they die, their spirit taken by angels to Sheol, whether at the righteous or the unrighteous side, and you wait the resurrection, which is at the seventh trumpet on the day of the Lord, versus an unclean spirit has to go somewhere. He either goes to Tartarus to be locked up, or he goes under the command of Satan. So if we're making the connections correctly, which I think you gentlemen are in agreement with Rob Skiba's connection making, as far as Nimrod being the same one that comes out of the pit, out of the bottomless pit in Revelation 9 and Revelation 17, that it's the same character. He is the one that comes back. Well, that's consistent with what the ancient Egyptians spoke about the phoenix, which was another representation of Osiris. He was the only god that was going to come back. And so that would make sense if Ra, who's the Satan character in the Egyptian pantheon, if he actually had the tech, if I could put it like that, through some sort of pillar that they called the Djed. And by the way, in the ancient Egyptian language, the word Djed translates to serpent wisdom. Isn't that interesting? And if he had the actual tech to change Nimrod's mortal flesh into immortal, making him an unclean spirit, basically. So then that's why he can still be alive and come back at the end of days.
So that's pretty much just you then making a distinction between just like the giants that were made bigger than everyone else by like what root cuttings and the gibberellins that are in that process, making them
Yeah.
tall as opposed
Right.
to actually changing the the
Their
type
ontology.
of flesh, yeah, that they have. So
Yeah.
I mean,
okay,
is it
cool,
Actually
too
changing
far
their physical nature.
too far of a
sure.
stretch to say that you had the king that was, I mean, literally running all of Mesopotamia at the time? And, people would, just thinking of like Game of Thrones ish kind of like storyline, right? Where you have all these people from stretching out all over the lands. Would it be too far of a stretch to think that maybe they found some kind of pre flood tech and brought it to the king and he utilized it?
Well, they don't. Well, yes, but they don't need to find it. Literally, it's in my understanding, it's still they have the pre-flood angel. They have Azazel there, right?
Sure.
So like they have him. He could be the great old ancient wise one that tells them all that special boy secret knowledge that
And
they feel so empowered
and they had a
by.
priest that they had the priesthood at the tower at the creation of Babel, right? They had the priesthood of
Yeah,
what, Zeus, or
of
Satan.
Zeus. Yeah, which would be
Um,
Azazel. I don't and
so
see. I don't know, Aaron, if you've seen me. I don't know if you've seen the entire series, but seen me make that connection where I go through the Book of Enoch and I try to show that Azazel in the Book of Enoch that's not punished in the same manner as the
Right.
other Watchers
Right.
who took wives. He is post flood. He is the Zeus character of
Okay.
ancient Greece and the Ra character of ancient Egypt. So therefore, he's made that transition. And then if you've seen the end of the Investigating Babylon series, you know how he made it through that transition and where he literally hung out during that
Right.
transition.
I'm not going to spoil it for everybody, but yeah.
So so
No,
that's
and
another
yeah,
thing of
I mean,
being an
he
angel.
definitely would
He's
have
got
had, had the technology or the knowledge to, have him, start becoming a Gibberim. Because it almost seems like as we read through the text, he becomes kind of like a pet progeny of this Zeus Azazel character, right? As you see him kind of utilized. So I've always kind of looked at the Antichrist spirit as the kind of talked about as this multi-headed dragon, where it rears its head up throughout time, affecting, like the King of Tyre or some of these other, powers or whatever, not fully being like possession of a body, but maybe being influential on some type of king or whatever. So I've seen different perspectives on that. I'm not sure where I settle on 100%, but I feel like when we read Isaiah 14's text and we see about the King of Tyre text, it almost seems like they're talking about the same person, the same principality, like this entity, I guess I should say, that's popping up throughout history. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
are you referring to the Nimrod character in Isaiah 14?
Yeah, yeah, like the
Yes.
spiritual, like
Yeah.
the entity that is Nimrod post his death. Yeah.
Yeah. We can go to that passage if you like.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's I mean, I think it starts in chapter verse 3, goes all the way through verse 25. So I don't want to like assume you're talking about a certain part of it and misunderstand.
Um, yeah, I mean, so I call it the Lucifer text, right? It's the only time the term Lucifer or Hillel ben Shakar is ever mentioned in the Bible. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but one of the things I do know are, in Hebrew is Ben means the son of, right? So when you're looking at this, that implies a lot of people assume that this is Satan, right?
Yeah.
In this passage, but it's implying that he's son of the dawn or son of the morning, which is he's a Ben Shakar, right? He's son of something. So it means that he has a lineage of something, or he is, associated with somebody. He, like as it says, like Satan has a lineage, basically, like, your sons. When he's just kind of talking, the scriptures talking figuratively about the followers of Satan, right? So if he is associated with like a spiritual son of Satan, or however you want to look at it, he would be called Hillel ben Shakar. Again, he has multiple names all throughout the text, so this wouldn't be that far of a stretch to say they're speaking of this same character. I can read it real quick because this is actually a song that taunts against the king of Babylon. Right? It literally says this. This is Isaiah 14, and it starts in 3. And we can kind of look at some of the other stuff with the king of Tyre as well. But I like this text right here because it says, when the Lord is, and this is I'm using the ESV right now just because it was the first one I grabbed, but when the Lord has given you rest from your pain and turmoil and hard services which you were made to serve, you will take up and taunt against the king of Babylon. How the oppressor has ceased, the insolent fury has ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked. Now, we haven't seen that happen yet, right? That the wicked still prevails on the earth, right?
Right.
It says they struck the people in wrath and unceasing blows. That ruled the nation in anger and unrelented persecution. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. I mean, has that happened yet? Like, do you see any time in history where that's happened yet?
No, I mean, not definitely not in this context of Babylon and the Middle East and the
Right.
kingdoms against it, and yeah,
So it says the cypresses and the cedars of Lebanon are saying, since you laid low, no woodcutter comes up against us. Sheol beneath is stirred to meet you when you come. It rouses the shades to greet you, all who were leaders of the earth. It raises from their thrones all who were kings of the nations. All of them will answer you and say to you, you too have become weak as we, and you have become like us. Your pomp has brought you down to Sheol, and the sounds of your harps, maggots are with the sounds of your harps. The maggots are laid as a bed beneath you, and the worms are your covers. Oh, how you have fallen from heaven. This translation says, O day star, son of the dawn, but it's Hallel ben Shakar in the original Hebrew. How are you cut down to ground? You lay low the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. And that ascension in Hebrew is a consistent thing. It's not like he already ascended. He is continually trying to ascend. It's an action that's still in action. I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God, and I will set my throne on high, and I will sit on the mount of the assembly in far reaches of the north. And in my kind of study, we've followed this like mount of the assembly, this place of residence for the council, which now seems to be devoid or whatever, and he's trying to take this seat over where the council was at. Is that kind of what you see in your studies,
yeah,
Sean?
yeah. That he's definitely trying to get onto the mountains of assembly and be one of the main decision makers.
Yeah. And it says, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you and ponder over you. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a desert and overthrew its cities, who did not let his prisoners go home? All the kings and nations will lie in glory, each in his own tomb, but you are cast out, away from your grave, like a loathed branch, clothed with the slain, who's pierced by the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit like a dead body trampled underfoot. You will not be joining with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land and you have slain your people. May the offspring of the evil doers never more be named. Prepare slaughter for his sons because of the guilt of their fathers, lest they rise and possess the earth and fill the face of the world with its cities. It says, I will raise up against them, declares the Lord of hosts, and I will cut off Babylon's name and remnant, descendants and posterity, declares the Lord. I will make it a possession of the hedgehog. I don't know why that's whatever. The pools of water, and I will steep it with a broom of destruction, declares the Lord of hosts. So, I mean, there's a lot right there, but to me, it doesn't seem like that's happened yet. Do you see that? Like, this is like a future context. Is that correct?
That's my understanding as far as, who there is only one leader that I know of that was a king of Babylon that didn't actually get a grave. And even that's consistent with the Egyptian story of Osiris, who would have been Nimrod. He was someone that was chopped up into many pieces and spread around, and then they tried to recollect those pieces, and then Isis, his sister wife, tried to raise him from the dead so that she could impregnate him with Set. And so there's even in their own story where Osiris is one of the most glorified gods under Ra, he doesn't have a glorious burial and is not in his own tomb. So it's very interesting. And supposedly even as of today, like the tomb of Osiris, supposedly they found the antechamber of the tomb of Osiris deep down below in the Giza Plateau pyramid area, that there was nothing there. Like there's no mummy there.
Yeah.
So
And supposedly it was filled with black goo that people were like vying to drink. Like that's
gross.
where their brain went. 2,000-year-old goo in the bottom of a hole, and you want to drink it.
Yeah, it's like they learned nothing from the Alien franchise of movies.
Right.
Don't drink the black goo, man. So yeah, it's interesting to me because he is, of all the kings of the earth and kings of the nations, they get this amazing, glorious funeral and burial, and especially in the ancient world, like literally building building monuments to them and stuff like that. But he's very unique, and so to me, that's a huge qualifier that lines up, as well as I love the passage up here in verse 13. He says, "You said in your heart, you'll ascend to the heavens and raise my throne above the stars of God." That traditionally, both through ancient Hebrew literature as well as the most commonly agreed upon scholarship about the Nimrod character, is always attributed to Nimrod. That's not attributed to Satan. I know in modern churches they've taken these words and thought, oh, it must be talking about Satan because it uses that Jerome Latin transliteration to Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about, especially what I try to bring up as a point of context in the Investigating Babylon series, they had flying machines. They had high altitude superior craft flying machines, and this is documented, talked about, written about. Like they've got schematics that have been found. Like they had the ability to fly. So, and it was used by the rulers and heads of nations, and especially people that were deified as gods. So I mean, this, and it even says in one of the passages I tried to cite in my Investigating Babylon series that it was from a Babylonian text that was actually written in Sanskrit, which is a very fascinating connection, because I'm going to talk about the connection between these cultures here in a minute. But they talked about how it was the gods who used the flying machines to come down and bring them that knowledge down to mankind to save people. And so, well, here he is trying to ascend above the stars of God, ascend above the tops of the clouds, and make himself like the Most High. So not only would I think that could relate to the actual tower itself. If we believe Jubilee's translation on measurements, the tower itself was only about 1.5 miles tall. And I say only because that's still bigger than any building that's ever been built in our modern time. But most clouds start around 3 miles. So to me, it would be there's much higher places they've gone to because they have flying machines. And then of course the idea that if Satan doesn't go down to Sheol, that's another huge qualifier.
Right.
Satan does not go to Sheol.
He doesn't die either. No, he doesn't die. He doesn't need a funeral. The only time he's extinguished from existence is the lake of fire, and that's after the millennial reign. That's a long time from this supposed moment of Isaiah writing this. And that's only this, all of this context would speak about a ruler, a human ruler of some sort, that everyone knew of, that normally would have received a burial, that had overcome other kings of other nations, which is why the spirits of the dead are rising and they're interested to meet him when he shows up. They're like, oh, you're the dude that killed me and took away my kingdom. It's like one of the other things I find real interesting about this Lucifer text, because this is about decoding the devil, because in modern Christianity we use the term Lucifer very, very flippantly, right, as a name for the adversary. And we also apply a lot of other context from this passage to him. Like they say, oh, but he was the angel of all the music, because this one text says that he has harps, and which the other translation is that they're like horns or like a declaration of noise or music. And so they assume that he was like the leader of the choir in heaven because of this Lucifer text. So there's a lot of misconceptions about this text being applied to the adversary. Just in the name alone. I think I covered this in a short video that I posted on Facebook a long time ago, when I actually was studying out the first, the church fathers, and when they were having discussions, and Saint Lucifer was actually somebody who was a very strong advocate against Arminianism during the first 300s. The first was his name, Constantius II, was pushing a very his type of agenda of how he wanted the church, the Roman church, to move forward. And Saint Lucifer was an advocate against that, and a very staunch advocate against it. And one of his opponents had an understudy named Saint Jerome, who was actually the guy who translated all of the text to Latin. And he put a slight in there against Lucifer by changing Hillel ben Shakar to the name Lucifer. What's funny is Lucifer just means light bearer. My name Christopher means bearer of light. Lucifer was a very... Please tell me it didn't just drop again. Oh no, it just dropped again.
Buffering. It's buffering like it started to do last time.
Oh my gosh. It's still going. Okay. I think we're okay. Okay, everybody in the chat, we buffered for a second there. Is everybody good? Can everybody still see this? I thought I almost lost it. Okay, thank you. Praise yeah. Like I was like, man, I don't want to go through this again. I don't want to have to splice this video 3 times. All right, cool. We're good. All right. Thank you, Father. Okay. Well, what I was saying is that the term Luciferians comes from the followers of Saint Lucifer. They were his group of people that he was pastoring over, and they were very staunch supporters of his theological positions. And they ostracized him from the church, called him heretical, and booed them all out and called him Luciferians. And now we use that term to talk about YouTube.
Did it twice last time before it turned it off.
No.
So hopefully it.
Oh, okay, we're still here. Jeez, man, they are trying hard tonight. Okay, we're back, guys. I'm sorry if this kicks off again, guys. We'll either try to get it back on this channel, or we'll finish it off over on one of Sean's channels. So it looks like we're okay right now. See, I'm not getting anything on OBS. OBS says my connection rate's perfect. So this is something
I'm telling you,
YouTube's
brother,
doing.
it's not your stuff.
No, I know. All right. Well, okay. So I'm finished with my rant before we get booted off again. All right. So where do we go? Where do we go with Nimrod post his death, and as we're moving through the time of Christ, through the time of the prophets, the kings, and the priests, as we're moving into that, where's Lucifer? What, or not Lucifer? Well, I mean, guess technically, where is this Nimrod character, and what's he doing during this time period? Do you see him popping up throughout history?
I don't. I see him in some form, some compartment of Sheol, and being held and only going to be released. It could be that he's literally been sent to Tartarus, or not Tartarus, but he's been sent to the place in Sheol where the 9/10 of the unclean spirits were sent during the days of Noah, and that's why all these other things come out with him in Revelation 9:1-11 when he's released, is because the other 9/10 are actually let out. And this is what I believe is Second Baruch chapter, I think it's chapter 27, that's talking about the 10 different plagues that happen at the consummation of the ages. And one of those is the attacks of the Shadim, which is exactly that word that you read in Isaiah 14, which is translated to the spirits of the dead. So this is where you'd have in Revelation 9:1 these crazy things that come out resembling one of the avatars of Hades, which is a lion-like chimera with a stinger of a tail, led by Apollo, Nimrod, Apollyon, the Phoenix, led by the first beast. So this would make perfect sense with everything that the ancient world talked about in their writings, with the definitions of the terms, with the descriptions of what Sheol is and where the 9/10 of the unclean spirits went that weren't put under Satan's control to tempt mankind, and then why they're let out at the very end, and then all of them are destroyed when Yeshua returns. Like, it would make a lot of sense with all those things put together. It's just a big story, and a lot of people don't take the word seriously to begin with, so then it makes it nearly impossible to put it all the pieces together, because they try to reinterpret, or they don't know the history of Lucifer, the word Lucifer being used by the Latin text, or just pick a little point of needed context to put all these things together. And the biggest one being they don't take the word seriously. So even in that passage you were just reading, Isaiah 14, it like I said before, they think, well, man can't ascend above the stars, man can't make his throne amongst the Most High and be in the clouds. That must be an angel, it must be Satan, right? But they don't realize, there's a biblical definition for the creation model. Man cannot go above the firmament. So I think the angel, well, it must be the angel. But even people that are heliocentric minded will think, well, it must be the angel. But I'm sitting there going, look, guys, the ancient texts, they all talked about there was a place in the sky where the gods of the Babylonian gods, the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods, they dwelt in the sky. And so this would be above the clouds, but not above the firmament. And so that's where I think he's been made a deity through all these ancient cultures, even though he's already in Sheol awaiting this whole time. And Ra is still alive. Satan is still alive, running around seeking whom he may devour this whole time, carrying on the worship of the first beast. And so that's why it's still propagated by the priesthood of the occult that serves Satan, is they're still carrying on the light bringer's image and homage and worship through the secret societies, because that is whom they view as the phoenix. It's whom they view as the God that's going to show up. And I think it's so interesting in that passage in Isaiah 14. It says, "You destroyed your own people," and because he was called the destroyer, and he's called the destroyer again when he shows back up in Revelation 9. Apollyon Abaddon is the destroyer. So, oh, and by the way, just for fun, in Sanskrit, the word NASA means destruction. And they everything that NASA does is some sort of subtle hinting towards Apollo. They love
subtle.
Yeah.
What subtle hint?
Right.
I've seen some of the badges that are more than subtle, like the patches for the different missions
Yeah,
and stuff.
the moon missions named Apollo and all that kind of stuff. At the conference this weekend, that was someone that came up to me at the table and said, "Hey, did you realize that you mentioned all those connections with Apollo?" He goes, "Did you realize that the NASA missions for Apollo took place within 42 months? All 6 of those missions."
Wow.
And I was like, I said, "That's very interesting. I did not know that little detail, but I wouldn't put it past them, because I'm about to do an entire series on the 42 exact months of the reign of Apollo back on the earth, trying to take over the nations again, just like he did in this Isaiah 14 passage. And that's what he tries to do again right before Yeshua returns."
Yeah. So do you think, this is just from my own perspective, like when we look at stories like the Witch of Endor, and this communication, like we see the occult trying to open portals and trying to bring communication with these other spiritual beings. Do you think that the occult or the powers that be have been trying to communicate with Nimrod all these years, like trying to communicate with him in Sheol?
I'm not an occult expert. I do know that if they're, I do know the, familiar spirits though are definitely. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know the metaphysics of that type of communication. If they could actually somehow make a connection with someone in Sheol, something tells me that's a no, and that it's just the familiar spirits would impersonate it, to carry on the storyline, carry on the
Do
worship.
you think they could carry messages though, like those?
And that's the part I don't know. We don't see in the scriptures. So, like, if Jubilees is correct, and all these disembodied Nephilim from the flood now are still on the earth tormenting mankind, and Noah's like, "Father, please help us. There's way too many of them." And so 90% of them are sent down to Sheol, and only 10% of them are left out to roam around with Satan, as we know today, as the unclean spirits. Is there some sort of was that just like that 10% that left out? Did they volunteer for that? Was a choice given to all these unclean spirits saying, "You can't stay on the earth. Like, you lost your bodies in judgment to the flood. Now your spirits are going to be sent to a place that holds spirits." But Satan petitioned Yahweh and was like, "Hey, I need some of them in order to tempt mankind to do my will. Otherwise, I won't have enough people to test mankind. I won't have enough on my side to test mankind." So in a weird way, and it's like, I've always wondered, because scripture doesn't explain, the unclean spirits that were locked away in Sheol and wait to get out towards the end of the days versus the ones that have been on the earth this whole time under the authority of Satan, going around fooling people and possibly possessing people from time to time. Do they, like, is there some sort of like, all right, I've spent 100 years up here, I have to give someone else a chance to come up and spend is it an interchangeable 10%, or is it the same 10%? You know what I mean? And they don't have to ever, because remember the reason I say that is because in Matthew 8, those demons that Yeshua kicks out of Legion, and they plead, "Do not send us to the pit."
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes me wonder if that was just them fearfully saying that, or if that was an actual thing that happens.
Yeah.
So it just makes me wonder, is there some sort of interchange where it's like only 10% of the total number of you can be on the earth under Satan's control at any point, and that 10% can be interchanged over time? Or is it just the same exact 10% of them? I don't know.
See, that's kind of in my understanding of studying the occult for a long time, is I've always assumed that they have been trying to continually, like when you look at Old Testament, the appearances of demonic like actual physical manifestations of demons are very limited. But as you get into the time of Jesus, you start seeing more and more interactions where people are demonized, and you get into Acts and into Revelation, it becomes like it's widespread. I believe that the occult has been consistently trying to open portals to be pulling these things out, with the culmination of it eventually just breaking the seal, and then all of them come pouring out. I see a lot of people speculate about CERN, and which they have very good reason to, because of its location and everything that is attached to, that it could be some way of them actually opening up a door, a gateway to unseal, the this end time event that lets, the angel of the abyss, or the messenger of the abyss, and all of these unclean spirits just pour out onto the earth. So I don't know that it's it was kind of capped at 10% at that time, but I think that people have been trying to unleash more of them over time, and we see this all the way back in like the vision of the people underneath the temple turning their back to God, and like doing these kind of Babylonish style workings. We learned, we've studied about Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons and all these guys that were out there opening portals. What were they doing? I mean, if they're already demons walking around, what's the point of opening the portal? What's the point of doing the portal work, unless they're bringing something through or trying to pull something through or whatever? And we see the same thing when the people at CERN, and even what's his name, the guy that created the D-Wave computer, Geordie Rhodes, right? They talk about this like almost portal-like thing about communicating with something on the other side. So that's just kind of my assumption from looking at what the occult does. I don't think they do it without having results. So they're doing something, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, I agree. Since I met my wife, she's always asked me about CERN, and I'm like, I honestly don't know, because I've never found any good, reliable information to even post a good speculation as far as what they could be doing. And clearly, I don't. There's clearly something going on. Now, let's take another quote unquote psyop, if I could put it like that. Let's take another money laundering scheme that doesn't actually do anything, and look at the NASA space shuttle program and the rocket program. Right now, that's stagecraft. That's a stage show. Those aren't actually going anywhere. That's for the people to see, a public display and spectacle. But CERN is different. Billions of dollars going into that, and no one can see it. You just get news blurbs from time to time. So that's like a totally different level.
10-year-old pictures like
Exactly.
attached to them.
It's not like it's not like it's a museum tour. They don't take kids there to teach them about advanced physics of any kind or anything. Like, they're not college tours. Like, they don't. It's secret access for only specific types of people, and it's a very mysterious operation. So it doesn't seem to be the same type of stagecraft as something like NASA or SpaceX. But I agree with you. They're trying to do something for sure.
Isn't Shiva one of the representations in like
the Destroyer?
It was the Destroyer, which had the obviously the direct correlation to the Nimrod character. That's what's sitting right out in front of the front yard. It's like, if there's nothing going on, it's just like it's an awful coincidental choice of homage that was put there. So
I saw somebody make a really solid connection about you'll have to remind me, because I don't have the scripture pulled up, but it's like Revelation 3, or it's where it talks about, he's talking to one of the seven churches, and he says, I know that you are where the seat of Satan is, and where one of the apostles was stoned. Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about?
Revelation 2:10-14.
And they were able to show that the area where this happened was related to like Switzerland, where this CERN place is located. So I thought it was some good information. I didn't get to really like study it out. Have you seen anything like that kind of shows that?
I've heard that claim. I didn't understand it quite entirely, because Pergamum is the city and the church that's being referenced in that passage. And that's, from all historical accounts, that is an actual city in ancient Anatolia, or what we used to be called Asia Minor, now modern day Turkey. So I'm not sure how. I didn't get to see that person who made that claim and their connection, whatever evidence they claim connected, because Switzerland is definitely not.
That's a different area from Asia Minor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know that there were wasn't this, what was that place called? It was something of Zeus, where they took it and they moved it to Germany, and it was known as the seat of Satan, or the
It
seat
was
of
literally
Zeus.
the replica of the Temple of Zeus that they rebuilt, repolished, and then moved to Germany, or Hitler moved it to
And that
Germany.
was originally in Pergamum, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. It
And then
was
now, yeah, then you had Obama that like did the recreation of it, was his inauguration or whatever.
yeah, yeah, which is creepy because why would you do that? And it's hilarious how the American political left didn't seem to care that Obama's standing in front of something Hitler valued so greatly.
Right.
Well, they didn't.
It's
They
like,
didn't care when they. I mean, it was the same administration that was like a big proponent of like shuttling Anubis around around the world too, in like
yep.
multiple places too. So it's like if they didn't care about that, like it's probably not like a big leap to think they care about the actual Temple of Zeus, recreation being used. But yeah.
So when we're moving forward now, we're going in towards prophecy of the end times, which we have a lot of accounts all throughout the Old Testament into the New Testament where Jesus spoke on what was going to happen in the end times, this man of perdition, these stages that are being set up, this Babylonian system and this Babylonian religion and this Babylonian monetary system are going to be kind of built up in preparation for the return of this king of ruin, right? And then he kind of he just bursts onto the scene, and that kind of continues on to a whole lot of things. I want to kind of let you roll into that, but we're now seeing him as become a major player in the end times events that happen before the return of the Messiah. So, however you want to approach that, let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, my particular understanding of it, my research is that he doesn't show up until approximately 42 months before Yeshua wraps everything up and returns and stomps them all out. But it's actually the revealing of Zeus to the world again, which is the dragon of Revelation, which is what you just referenced in Revelation 2, the seat of Zeus, the throne of Satan in Pergamum. And he's the one who's reintroduced to the world, in my understanding, as far as normalizing outright open worship to someone again. And the whole, because he, I mean, we understand that the first king of Babylon, that's a man, same thing that was listed in Isaiah 14. They said, is this the man who conquered nations? And so, but we know that Zeus is not considered a man. Even the ancients didn't call him a man, didn't think of him as a deified man. No, they knew he was an archon, if you will. They knew he was a higher being. He was considered a god. So to me, in my understanding, it's leading up in the next 40 to 50 years, they're going to want to and this is to where in my putting, connecting dots, they're wanting to make good on all their indoctrination for the heliocentric model with the vastness of space and potential aliens in space coming to Earth, on top and the back of the panspermia deception, which is that, and for anyone that's out there may not be familiar, they've been teaching for decades now to young kids in university that panspermia is the theory that the Earth and all of its wonderful intricacies, biological intricacies, is actually seeded by something. So this is that famous interview that you may have seen Ben Stein had with what was that guy's name? Famous atheist.
Yeah, we just talked about this the other day.
The British guy that looks like he's an alcoholic because his cheeks are always red.
Yeah,
Charles,
he kept asking.
Charles Dawkins.
Yeah, Dawkins.
Yes,
Richard
yes,
Dawkins.
Charles Dawkins. Yeah, and Ben Stein's interviewing Charles Dawkins, and he's like, "Wait a minute, did Charles Dawkins just say that he believes intelligent design is real? But it's just not the God of the Bible. It's a alien progenitor that was on the earth and then left the earth after he seeded the earth with life and let the evolutionary process take over and create everything we see today. And then he's going to come back and visit us again." So this is the mainstream narrative propagated by people as high up as Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins, who are also pushing an atheistic model of any other answer than Yahweh, creator of heaven and earth, right? So their answer is, heliocentric model is real, evolution process is real, and all that was instituted on the earth, the evolutionary life cycle was instituted on the earth by a super smart alien intelligent designer who came and seeded the earth, and he's probably going to come back someday. and they've been pushing that for several decades in academia.
Right.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think that I feel like they had to get to that point because you get to the paradox of circular reasoning in the like the actual Big Bang, creation model that it was you were getting a lot of people that were really studying this thing out, and it's like, okay, well, hold on, something doesn't make sense along that line, so they had to, okay, well, yeah, there was intelligent design, and it just happens to be this this character from 18 billion light years away. He's finally made it back and whatnot. He's come to check on us. But
Right. And in a story from that guy, from the story that Satan could easily say, according to all the advanced physics that tries to get propagated when it comes to heliocentric model as far as space-time and the theory of relativity, is the quote-unquote alien visitor that's the progenitor of mankind. He can come back looking like a man and say, come back in his vimana and show up and be like, hey, to me, I've only been gone for like 4 or 5 months, but because I went to a different space-time and there's different gravity laws and there's different solar systems there, it was actually thousands and thousands of years in your time. They've set this up in lots of science fiction movies.
Interstellar.
Interstellar is a great example because they went down to that planet for like 2 hours. It was like 60 years when they get back to the ship.
Yeah.
Speaking of like pop culture and like sci-fi movies and everything, just reminds me of this entire conversation. But it was Thor: Love and Thunder. He actually travels to a place where all the gods sit on a council, and it's this floating thing that reminds me of Vermana. And who's the leader of the entire group? It's Zeus, played by Russell Crowe. And it's just insane that they literally take this imagery and put it in a comedy /, Marvel movie, and then slap it right there as, hey, the gods are hanging out right here and Zeus is right there with them. And you're like, when you know, and you're like, oh, that's weird. Why put that in there?
Yeah, it is really strange. But it's perfectly fitting when you know their theology, their true theology. And it's not a postmodernist, materialistic, evolutionary, heliocentric theology. That is the cover language for them. Like I always joke about with the rabbis of Judaism and the Catholic Church. They hold up the Bible and they claim that this is their theology and all the buzzwords in there, but then they feed you their own doctrines of Babylon. And so this is where the science world does the same thing. They hold up intellectual reasoning and evolutionary observation and testing and bones dug up and all that stuff, and they hold up the idea of quantum mechanics and math and all that stuff to try to prove their evolutionary heliocentric model. But really, they're feeding you ancient Hindu or ancient India theology about multiverses. So did you guys know that in ancient India, one of the top 3 pantheon of the ancient trinity of ancient India, between Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they taught a theology of multiverses, multiple worlds of existence, all intertwined and happening at the same time, exactly like the Marvel franchise is setting up. So this is why that pantheon, or that theology, is integrated into the modern day indoctrination. And yeah, so they absolutely, Shiva, like you mentioned, Daniel, was considered the destroyer of worlds. And that means Shiva could move into different worlds within the multiverse and destroy different worlds if they wanted to conquer any world it wanted to. So this was nothing new under the sun, guys. This is just repackaged ancient Babylonian / Indian theology, because it was all integrated together. It's just certain texts survived over time, and so then they're solely attributed to ancient India. But the same gods who ruled over ancient Greece and ancient Babylon and Acadia and Chaldea and Assyria, they all had intercooperation with each other. And that's why I try to show in my Best Game Babylon series through actual documentation. And so it was, we just have a lot more writings preserved to us from ancient India. So therefore, modern scholars who reject this correlation that the Bible, which would validate the Bible, so therefore they have to reject that correlation. They have to think that India was its own separate society that didn't interact with Babylon or Mesopotamia. And so they claim, oh, well, because we have the extensiveness of documentation of writings of that type of philosophy and theology, then therefore it must have been solely respective to just India. And but no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Shiva was a character recognized by all these other cultures, just like in the modern day, Vishnu is now the Buddha recognized by most Eastern nations. So it's anyway. There's a lot of correlation between these ancient theologies, and as far as bringing that back out onto the mainstream, this is why because from my understanding of Revelation 6 and Revelation 9, Hades comes out with Apollyon. It's just Apollyon is the main character, so therefore he's focused on. But it says in Revelation 6, I saw death and Hades rode close behind him. That those are the same two dudes from the past.
Yeah. And you kind of talk about this and we kind of paralleled when you were doing investigating Babylon, we were doing a study on Revelation, and we started looking at this other character, this Nurgle character who rises or is a friend in the Gilgamesh lore. That he had this partner who again looks like this chimera, this big bearded guy. I mean, he's like
Enkidu.
Yeah, Enkidu, right? And you see that all of these characters always have this understudy or this. I consider it a high priest, right? That works underneath of him. And we see this in the Nimrod story. We see this in the Gilgamesh story. We see this in the Revelation story, where we have a false prophet that arises, and then we also have the Antichrist, right? So we have again this other character who's less known, but is pointing people to, almost like John the Baptist pointed to the Messiah. He comes before, and he comes preaching, the gospel of this kingdom, right? This false kingdom that's coming, and this Nimrod character appears, correct?
Well, from my understanding, his hype man, his high priest that's pushing Nimrod, who is Apollyon, is going to show up with him in the 42 months. But I don't know exactly how they're going to parlay the public, the PR of it all. You know what I'm saying? I do know that the world will be dumbed down enough at that point to revert back to open idolatry in the streets, to where they can go up to a temple of Zeus and the temple of Apollo in the streets and worship them again. Will they be called that in the future? I don't know, because Babylon is great at masking itself into different cultures.
Wasn't there a passage that talks about you will worship gods that your ancestors didn't know or your fathers didn't know? Like this kind of.
I think that was in Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was in Deuteronomy, speaking to some of the rebellious descendants of Israel that came out. So that would make, again, if you understand ancient Egyptian history, that would make a lot of sense with how there was a core group of gods. And then over time, they expanded that pantheon. Now, this is where I want to ask you guys your theory, though. Would you put it past the deceptions of the rulers of the elite that we live in this world today? Would you put it past them to try to introduce Zeus? They won't call him Zeus, but they'll try to introduce an alien to mankind, right? And then that's going to be the guy that says, oh, I'm a good guy here to help you, but there's other bad aliens out there that aren't very good, and they may show up one day, and we may have to take care of them.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I've tried to. It's just how my brain works. I've tried to theorize many different ways that Revelation could actually come to fruition, like from a perspective of how we view everything. And the only way I can really see it is we have to come to grips with something that is beyond our scope of understanding. And it's already like, that's what they've been pushing on us for so long, is this idea that there are these species, that seeded us, or they're, come traveling from millions and millions of miles away and, light years away. And they have all of this future tech, and they could heal the human condition, and they'll come in with this mark. And that's the only way I can see the entire population. Like we saw a lot with this last Pokey thing, but that was only about 56% of the population of the world went and fell for this. We're talking about like a 98, 99 percentile are going to fall for this other deception. So I know there's a lot of advocates out there for, you know, the last pokey being the mark of the beast. But if you guys are already set that's the mark, man, you're gonna be you're gonna be so blown away when the actual mark comes, because from what I see from the mark, it is an overall cure for the human condition. No more cancers, no more death. It will extend your life. You don't want to be ugly anymore? Cool, it's going to make you beautiful. Like it will literally be the cure, where everybody, like, they don't force anybody to take it. People like are like trying to get this thing. It's given to them as, like, again, this, it goes back to the same lie that was told in the garden. You shall be like gods, right? That's
Right.
exactly
Like
what he's going to tell them.
mixing into the transhumanism false promises.
Yeah, yeah. I see
It'll
all
make
of
you
this,
superior, and so that you don't have to be susceptible to disease or something like
or
that.
death or judgment, right? Like,
So what do you guys, this is a theory, a long-standing theory I've had pertaining to exactly what you just said, as far as it's the injection, the putting something into your body as a result of the mark seems to be in line with promising you, well, we know what it promises you in Revelation 13. It's to avoid not only death, but to avoid starving and losing your income and all that kind of stuff. But in Revelation 9, the things that come out of the pit with the Apollyon, that have the stingers for the tails, they can sting people and they have the torment to injure them for 5 months. So I've theorized for like several years now, what if those things, those chimera-like things that run around and they sting people, and then the people aren't killed, but they're just, it's the sting of a scorpion, which is pretty annoying. It hurts, and it's for 5 months. What if that's the injection of the mark itself? Because it's whatever this chimeric like thing could be, it's got in it basically the injections, in its tail,
and it's possible. I mean, I also see a lot of other things. I remember years and years ago when I was getting back into Revelation, I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I found zombies in the Bible. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, those that take the mark. They search for death and can't find it. They break out in legions after a certain point. And they're like, I look at Joel 2. I know a lot of people look at Joel 2 army just because of being raised up in Christianity. Like, that's the army of God. But when I look at Joel 2, I see that as being like a World War Z scenario. And the army of God that's spoken of is a one little blurb paragraph that says it tells the army that's encroaching from the storytelling perspective, and then the one little blurb at the bottom says, "Oh, how mighty is the glory of the army of God that this big army is rushing towards." That's my perspective of it, but I see it as being like, once these people take it, everything's great for a while, and then all of a sudden it turns into like zombie land, where everybody's just like breaking out in legions and they're demonically possessed. I mean, we think about Nephilim, right? If it's a possession of these people, what did it say the Nephilim did? The fallen did. They were cannibalistic, and they were perpetually evil. I mean, much more evil do you get than as a mindless zombie going around tearing at flesh and attacking people and mutilating them and stuff? So that's what I see. But I it's fantastical in my mind, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happened. Just because of the marketing, the way they market the aliens, the way they market the zombies, it's like they're putting it right in your face. So,
But
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
no, you just say your original question was would we put it past the elites? What was that in the 80s that Reagan said? There may be a day, there may be a time when the only way we get everyone,
right.
on the same page is if we deal with something from outer space. I think I think the groundwork has been set pretty well. For that to be well accepted, and we look at the constant media outputs of the same line of programming, same line of conditioning. It's going to be I think there's going to be a lot of people, when these things start happening, that like you have some people having heart attacks. I'm pretty sure that's mentioned. Like, it says that people start having their heart stops functioning properly because of what they're seeing happening in the world. And in a pure fear, because we've seen all this stuff in sci-fi film and whatnot, pure fear attached to that like, oh my gosh, maybe this, especially if you were raised in a Christian home, you see all this stuff happening and you realize, oh my gosh, like I wasn't prepared for this because I didn't think that this was, something that we were going to have to see or deal with or even possible. That's going to change people's perspective like drastically, very quickly. That would then, polarize them to the opposite, to where whatever is then presented is going to be that much more palatable, even if 2 days ago you'd have been like, there ain't no way, but once that polarization happens, I think that the status quo is going to shift dramatically. So
Yeah, and again, speaking of like how we kind of talked about this a little bit, but when I look at this whole alien, these concepts of the alien introduction to humankind, I go back and look at the War of the Worlds when it was introduced, and you had a spike during this radio broadcast. They had an abnormal spike in the local areas that were receiving this broadcast of the War of the Worlds of people committing suicide. And you had
Yeah.
these like backwoods hilljacks running out into their backyards and shooting the water towers that had been in their backyard for the
Yeah.
10 years because they thought that these aliens were coming. Now you fast forward to in the 90s with the movie Independence Day, and these mile wide stations park over New York City, and there's a guy on the top that says, take me," right? And everybody's out there, all the hippies are gathering. They're like, they've come to save us. And then the laser beam goes, right? Just wipes everything out. It just shows the mentality of how, in just a couple of decades, their indoctrination with, taking things like the Roswell incidents and stuff, and then moving into having movies like E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and all of these other kind of shows that really kind of like twisted the we should be scared, right? We have this I can't remember what the term is right off the top of my head, but we have this natural function inside of our bodies that when we look at something that's almost human but it isn't human, like an android or something like that. You guys may know the term. I can't remember what it's called, but we're uneasy. We're there's something uneasy about looking at something that's almost human. And somebody, if you guys remember what that's called in the chat, put it in there. But when you look at this idea that they've had to kind of indoctrinate us to get us to get away from our natural instincts, our more like clan tribal instincts of we only associate with things that look like us, right? And then now the potential of all of these things coming in this end times, they've basically just deadened our senses to the potential of different types of alien beings or creatures looking like they're bringing all of that back, like what was pre-flood, like all of this abominations and combining and hybridization of animals and people and stuff. That's almost becoming like with the whole superhero thing. Who wouldn't want to be able to fly like Superman or have eyes like an eagle or run like a leopard, right? So we can do that now. I think it's just really interesting that they're slowly chipping away at the psychology of our human condition to make us susceptible to what is coming, and
and
it's
the
all done through media and everything else.
the corporate level that they're doing, the programs that they're using at the corporate level, where the average wage worker around the world now has, as of I I never heard of a DE and I program before 2019. I don't think I'd heard of one before 2019. I really only came to like my awareness as of like 2020. But it's that same concept, and yes, it's not painted this in that same you know brushstroke to where like, okay, we need to include all the androids into like if you happen to work with an alien from quadrant F, like make sure they feel part of the team. But this diversity, equality, and inclusion programs that we're seeing is that same thing where it's just we're constant, like you said, it's a constant conditioning to make sure we accept things that don't necessarily look like the people we normally hang out with, right? um
Yeah,
and
they found
yeah,
that
go
the
ahead.
term was called the uncanny valley. Sorry, I wanted to put
So,
that in there. I couldn't remember what it was called.
I w- I want to work around the Bender robots.
Well, like just like what he was saying, but think about the agendas that we hyper focus on, like the LGBTQ agendas or the trans agendas, and we're like point at that and we say that's the end all goal. Well, actually, it's not. I mean, when I look at things like furries and this acceptance of you can be whatever you want, that's where it's actually going. They're just utilizing a group of people to push this agenda that you can't say anything or you should accept anything. If I walk out with, legs and look like, Pan, right? Like these goat legs or whatever, you should accept it. I identify as half goat today.
Yeah.
This is what we're moving towards. It's overall, it's chipping away at the overall, like the sexual aspect is only one part. It just happens to be like that. This is an acceptance of everything. You can believe whatever you want. You can be whatever you want, because eventually that's what they want to get back into. It's a multi-pronged approach that, for some people they want, like, well, I want to get uploaded to the AI, while other people may want to have this body modification, body manipulation. We see it all the time. They're going to get people to do whatever they can to be the most unnatural state, the anti-state that God designed them to be, because that is what violates Torah. That is ultimately the goal. The mark of the beast is just the capstone to all of that. It's the epitomization of, this is the final straw. Worship the beast, take the mark, and now you'll be part of this society that is all inclusive and accepts everybody. You can be whatever you want. It's literally the epitome of Babylon again.
Yeah. But like I showed in my series, both in Greek writings as well as in ancient India, they had AI like automatons, and they guarded the rulers, the kings, the gods, quote unquote gods. Why does a god need a little metal man to guard him? Very interesting. Because they're not a god, right? They're just, but to me, I agree with you. I think that not only is the modern social culture issues not the end goal. I agree with you. The end goal is to get more open and susceptible to sexual perversion in all realms, cross species, and all of it. The fullness of thereof, because Pan literally means have sex with anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's the stories of ancient Pan was. He would lure the people into the orgies, and he was a satyr. So it's that's not a place I'm prepared to go in my life, and I hope no one I know or my family ever does. But there are people out there already that would, if it was socially acceptable, they would engage in something like that. Now, mix that, the cross species of people, because I do believe various Nephilims are going to be back into the main culture, the mainstream culture. And I think we actually see a hinting of them in Revelation 19 when it talks about who Yeshua defeats at his return. And some of them are mentioned, the mighty men. But as far as other crossbred chimeras, I believe those will be also back in the mainstream, acceptable. They'll, it won't be trans rights. It'll be trans species rights that people will be picketing and protesting for. Because basically all of it boiled down to them screaming, "Don't judge me." I want to do something completely opposite of the Bible standard. Please don't judge me. That's what they're screaming. But in ancient times, not only did they have the chimeras, but they also had the AI-like automatons. And I think it's fascinating. That to me would be an incredibly strong deception, that people could willingly just have themselves killed because they're sold a lie. They see a very intelligent robot and an AI-like just imagine the scenario. Imagine an AI-like program where all it does is just takes a map of your neural network, and they've already got all of your speech from everything on social media, all the phone calls recorded of you, all of your typing patterns, all of your thought processing patterns, and your algorithms. They've already got that through social media. They've got you as a brain map. They put that into an AI program to replicate you, upload that software into an automaton, an actual AI body, a robotics and advanced robotics body, to when they could fool people to easily say, "See, your cousin Alfonso, we took before he died, we mapped his soul, we took him, uploaded him into the system, and now we've given him an eternal body. He can transfer if this metal body or this plastic body runs out, we can transfer him to a new body. He'll live forever now." And therefore people would willingly go into these facilities and allow themselves to be killed chemically to upload their consciousness into a program when they're literally just going to wake up in Sheol. But yet while on the earth, their friends and family are going to see this brain mapped, sophisticated algorithmic software that mimics who they were.
I think it would be demonically inspired as well. I've seen that. Yeah. I've seen demons when I worked in the paranormal field. like manifest and know things about people because they were familiar to the family. And it would just be another embodiment, another way to take another one of God's creation out of the race,
Yeah.
and then just fill it with a demonic spirit just to play human for a
Yeah.
little while. So it's scary, but people will do it. I mean,
Yep.
it would be one of those things for sure. And I think the AI is another aspect of it, because you see this image of the beast that comes to life. It'll be an end times, another aspect of this. Do you see the same thing with the image? I know there's been a lot of
Yes.
speculation.
Yeah, that is what I put forward in my series, is that this is not new. The idea of the second beast giving this image of the first beast a breath of life, and that's what actually runs around and forces people to worship the first beast, or they get killed. Is an actual just automaton of old. I mean, this was a thing called Talos to Zeus. He had a full-on flying automaton that protected his floating house in the sky, and he was called Talos. And it's literally the backdrop underpinning for the Terminator franchise. I mean, it was an AI who was created to protect, but yet kill mankind.
Hmm.
So that way, no one could get close to him if they ever wanted to. Same thing with the metal automatons that guarded the ancient rulers in ancient India. So to me, they're smart enough to know not to kill the servants of the king or anyone that was told not to. But then the people that try to attack the king, they knew to kill them. And so this is documented in ancient history. Like, this isn't fantasy. This isn't myth. This was their stories, and there's pictures and carvings and busts, great detail about what these were. And I think that's why the modern media and the modern culture pushes the robotic scenario so much. Not only does it lend to the transhumanism push, but also it's literally always been a part of Babylon.
Yep.
Can't watch
So-
the Iron Giant the same anymore.
Right. So therefore, it makes perfect sense that you would have the second beast create an automaton that forces their will on people. And this is also the storyline of so many countless games. It's also the storyline of the one of the most famous anime cartoons from 1984 from Japan, The City in the Sky, Laputa, to which Hollywood modeled the Academy Awards Museum in Los Angeles after that anime, specifically with the sphere that the giant robot came down to the girl. He used to, anyway. So I didn't have time to go into it in my presentation this weekend, but I do go into it in our series. And the occult people of the world, they signal, because they speak a secret language through codes and symbols, but they signal with all their media that they're very much in alignment with Zeus and with the idea of Talos, which is the automatons that guard the gods, as well as using the automatons to enforce the will of the gods on the people. So this is why all of the backdrop of those science fiction movies about AI robotics going wrong is the AI robotics turn on mankind. None of those stories are ever about, oh, we invented these AI robotics and suddenly they helped us defeat the aliens. We have this super advanced AI robotic that came to a level of sentience, and he turns on mankind. I mean, like, it's the story of the Avengers, Age of Ultron. It's the story of Terminator. It's the story of, what is, like, every single Terminator movie they ever made, they have to repeat the plot and the narrative of the story franchise, which is the moment Skynet comes aware, it starts firing missiles at mankind. Like, there's no grace period. Think about, Ultron in the Ultron movie, the Avengers 2015. The moment he becomes self-aware, it's literally a matter of seconds before he's walking out in a broken Iron Man body to try to kill the Avengers, and then uploads himself to the internet to learn how to kill all of mankind. So, like, they're not even like trying to hide it if you know the ancient story of Talos. But so anyway, I'll digress. There's a lot there, brother. There's a lot of symbolism there. And it's just people are not taught history. That's all it boils down to.
Yeah. So back to Nimrod in this in-game perspective. So he brings him back. Like, what is his goal? Why is Zeus? Why is the adversary? Why is he utilizing this man? Other than it's foretold, right? We get Jesus that even tells about, like, this man of lawlessness will will have to arise first. What's the overall purpose? Why bring Nimrod back, and why not just find somebody else who's just kind of a rude dude at the time? Why would they use him in this in-game scenario? What's the purpose? What's the point? Do you have anything you want to add to that?
To me, that's the $1,000,000 question. Yeah, why him? Of all the people in the ancient world or at any point in history, why did Satan, Ra, Zeus, why did he choose this particular Nimrod character, son of Arphaxad? Or excuse me, son of Ham, I believe. So why him? About all the other people out there, is it just simply that he was so unrighteous that he fit the bill? Because the reason I say that is when you become unrighteous, you become gullible. You're susceptible to being deceived by Satan, because he knows your mind is not with true wisdom and it's not discerning. You're open to being deceived. So is it simply he was the most rebellious one? He was the most, willing Nimrod, all pun intended, to be used by Satan? Or was it, I actually, you mentioned before we started Warhammer 40K, which I think is hilarious because I literally use clips from that in my Investigating Babylon series, because the story it tells is so ripe with perfect symbolism of the sphere, the order that's enforcing a religious zealousness onto the universe. Then you have the guardian of the sphere, who's literally Hades. And then when you go into the chamber, when the order's going into the chamber, they walk by the broken automaton to get into the interior chamber where this Hades character is sitting with the skull on his back, which is the symbol for Hades. And he's sitting there, who's the guardian of the sphere, and then they have to fight the other automatons, the 4 that are around the sphere, and they overcome them, and then they meld themselves into the sphere, where they see for a split second a Satan-like character, and then the guy that actually made it past that, then he wakes up in an Isaiah 14 moment where he sees the dead ancient kings enthroned all looking at him. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like crazy to me, as far as if the enemy is truly telling us stuff through cinema and modern games and things like that and animations, that could be how they actually got Nimrod. Is that he could have been someone that was raised to do what was right and go out and try to overcome the lawlessness that was rising up in the days of his generation, a couple hundred years after Noah got off the boat. But he got deceived by Satan. He got enticed, by the magic of Satan, by the sorcery, the magic, the deceptions, the illusions, whatever he did. He just got deceived and drawn in, and now he's 100% in.
Yeah.
So it's just a theory, right? As far as why him, and how it's not like everyone was being raised to be unrighteous.
Same thing with why Abraham seed. Well, that was literally was that what you're going to
stop it, Aaron? The thing that we noticed, not just in this conversation, but in a lot of the conversations that we've had in the past and along this similar topic, we see all the times where the enemy can't come up with any new ideas. He literally just takes what's already there and kind of flips it on its head, and uses the inverse of that. We like with, why did Satan choose Nimrod? Why, so many different things. I could literally, there's so many things I don't even know which one to start talking about. Like all the times where the enemy literally, counterfeited what the creator has actually done. And I just find it so interesting that at the exact time where Satan chooses Nimrod or identifies him as could be a candidate for what he's going to do later on, is when the creator chose Abraham to come out of all that.
What I think is funny with that, what I was going to say originally is, it's almost like it's a topsy-turvy thing, right? Because when you look at Nimrod was like kind of given a position, like the mighty hunter of God, right? Like recognized as a king over the people, and then he turns and flips and does the bad thing. And then you have Abraham, the son of an idol maker, right? Who, for all intents and purposes, would probably have continued in his father's work if God had not intervened. And now he is the one that is carrying the promise of God through his generations. It's almost like, I stole one of yours. Well, cool. I'm going to take this guy who's like an idol,
Yeah.
who knows all of the idols. His father creates all the idols for your guy, and I'm going to take him and I'm going to build a whole group out of his seed.
Yeah. No, he's stealing from the priesthood of Nimrod to make a priesthood of himself through Abraham's seed, which is just like, I'm not stealing is probably the wrong word, but
Right.
it's wonderfully poetic. I agree
Yeah.
with you. Yeah. And to the uttermost frustration of Nimrod to show you, you have no power here. See, you're just, you think you're just masquerading as long as I let you. But the moment I want to call anyone out of Babylon that I can, that he will and he can, and it's like I'm not jumping into Calvinism. I think people can reject him, but clearly, if you believe Jubilees chapter 11 and 12, Abraham at a young age of 14 had a conversion moment, and he realized the gods his father was making and worshiping were not truly gods, and that there was someone that made everything he was looking at the stars, sun, and moon, and the heavens, and he realized, okay, there's something greater than these little gods we're worshiping on the ground. And so I think it's fascinating that he can get anyone no matter where they are. And I love it because it's, man, it should encourage us. Abraham's story should encourage us that no matter who you know in your family or friends and what life they've had growing up, Father can pull them out. So when I was younger, I knew this girl that I dated in high school, and then we stopped dating, and I gotten saved at the end of my high school, like right before my senior year, and was trying to tell my friends about Jesus and invite them to church, and this girl, I tried to meet her and speak to her for like an hour and a half, and I bought her a Bible, and like she and I had already broken up the year before, but I still cared for her as a person, and I was like, man, you need to know Christ, and I got saved, and it's amazing, and here's a Bible, and she was just looking at me like, no, I want to. She literally said, I want to go party. Like, I'm about to go to college. Like, no. And I was like, but you can still have a great time at college. Like, I had no clue how to do any apologetics. I had no clue how to do anything. I was just full of zeal. And she just kind of was like, oh, thanks for the Bible. I'll try not to use it to prop up my bedpost. And she literally made that joke. And I was like, okay. So 2 years later, I prayed for her for like 2 years, off and on throughout my life in the next 2 years. 2 years later, she called me and said, hey, I'll be close in this area. If you want to get together, we have dinner and catch up. And so we did. And she was telling me about she got married and she has a child now, and she accepted Christ. And now the reason I say that was because this particular girl, she was extremely smart. She was attractive. She was valedictorian of a large school. She had full ride scholarship to college. Everyone who ever met her liked her. And the world gave everything to her. She lacked for nothing. You know what I'm saying? And God got her. So like on the way back from the restaurant, I was driving back and I was just praising God in the car. And I was like, man, I've been praying for a couple of years, and after my first attempt to talk to her about Jesus, it went so poorly. I thought, man, I definitely have no power over the situation. Only God can change the situation, right? So God did get her. Wasn't through me. It was some other, she just randomly went to church with someone one time and it responded to an altar call, and she would just drop the spirit on her right there randomly. She wasn't expecting it either. So all that to say, I felt like the Father was telling me in that car ride on the way home, never doubt me. I can get anyone. And I just remember going, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Like, I get it. I get it. And so I've definitely remembered that all my life. And Abraham is a wonderful example of that.
For sure.
So the thing I have to add really to the top of this is I just kind of look at imagine the kind of entity that had everything. It all literally crumbled before him, right? Dies, goes into Sheol, and gets mocked by all the people who were his enemies and who were the kings of the world around him, and gets cast out of the grave, comes back. Think of it, after thousands of years of being down into this desolate place, and he comes back. Do you think he's going to be happy? Or do you think he is going to come back with wrath?
He's the destroyer.
Yeah.
And he comes out just trying to take over the nations. I mean, I don't know what to me, I wouldn't even put it past him if that narrative, like I mentioned earlier, is what's the public relations narrative to the world, which is the Zeus character has already been introduced. They don't call him Zeus. He's just actually, like the Destiny game, he's the traveler in the sphere
Right.
that shows up, and he's the good alien that's going to help us cure cancer and get rid of the convids and all that stuff. Like he's the good alien that's going to help heal the world and show us some advanced tech and build some advanced weapons because he knows bad aliens are on the way. And then he just pawns off the bad alien narrative onto the first and second beast when they arrive.
Do you guys remember the show The Children's End or Childhood's End?
I never saw that.
So it's hilarious, right? I'm going to put this back up on the screen real quick, guys. The image that I use for our show, the Decoding the Devil, right? The devil entity on there. Let me pull it back up here real quick. This devil entity on here, that's this half of this person. It's from a movie called Childhood's End. Let me come back to the main here. If you guys haven't seen it, it is a story. Okay, there we go. My audio was lagging because I changed transitioned. But the story is that aliens come.
It's not showing anything though. I'm sorry.
Oh, it didn't come up. Okay, well, it may be a couple seconds delayed. But it is a story of an alien ship appears, and off walks this dude that looks like the devil, and he's characterized as like the savior of mankind. And then it's been a long time since I've seen the show, but there was something about him having to take the children with him to save the generations. And that's literally like the main, I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, but the main image that's related to the show is him getting back up on the ship with two little kids out by his side, like an Adam and Eve. So it's a crazy story, but that with that combination and the movie series V that came out in the 70s and was redone in the 90s was all about this story of these mile-wide ships that park over cities, and they say, we're here to be the saviors of mankind. Come get these shots, come get all this stuff. We're going to fix you, fix the human condition. And then you find out they're lizard people that want to eat you. Like, yeah. It's the most bizarre thing. It's like, it literally spells that out. That's the only way I can see Revelations playing out the way that it does.
Yeah, I mean, like there's another movie that does the exact same narrative. The one with, I want to say it's the one with Nicolas Cage, where like the end of days is happening, and then these two angels show up. They're like spirit being angels that come out and take kids with them. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was a Nicolas Cage movie. And yeah, there I've seen that narrative in quite a few concepts, and it's to me it's super obvious, but that's because we study the scriptures. There's a ton of people in this world that do not study the scriptures. I have no clue what we're talking about. Right now they're playing Minecraft or they're watching the Kardashians or something. Like they don't care about what we're talking about. So that's why we're constantly trying to get the word out, but and wake people up. But at the same time, like I agree with you, Aaron. I don't see any other narrative to where it's successful.
Was the movie
Unknown, yeah, that's it.
Cage, yeah.
Yep. I don't see any other narrative that they could portray on all the nations other than to say an alien has actually arrived and he's a good guy. He's nice. Oh, and he looks like one of us because he is us from 4, 5, 6,000, 10,000 years ago, whatever. And he's just figured out through technology how to live longer and how to travel space. So he's back. He's back to help us.
My biggest problem is Jesus already came and healed people and did miracles, did things, and still people rejected him. So if they bring a new Jesus out and he comes out and does all these miracle things, what makes you think that 99% of the population is going to be like, oh, Jesus is finally here? It has to be like so grandiose that it even goes above and beyond. Like he will become a Messiah type figure, but it's going to it's going to check all the boxes for what the end time says. So
yeah, that's interesting thought. I've never think about it like this. What if the premise that I put forward and the conclusions I try to show with evidence in the Babylon series is that the home of Satan, the home of Zeus, is literally still there, and as the elites of the world have stated, they want in the next 50 years to get mankind living in sky dwellings. Then to me that tells me there's it's probably just going to be for the super rich and elite, to live in advanced vimanas in the sky. But ultimately, you're going to have travel and commerce between the sky dwellings, and it would make perfect sense if it's more, if the traveler, if I could put him like that, which I think is hilarious because Zeus was known to be a friend
The
of strangers and
traveler, right.
travelers. Yeah.
And in
So-
the game, it's just a big white orb that floats over the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The traveler. So if they revealed the sphere that's up there, because he, instead of making it camouflage or see-through, he just turned off the camo tech and you could see it. And then you realize, all right, there's something up there. People could physically see something up there, but they can't go see him. They just trust the leaders to see him and then report to you back on the news what's being said and done. And then the evidence being, oh, and we have the cure for cancer now, so everyone line up, take the shot, to get your cancer cure and to make sure you never get cancer ever again. He gave us the information. See that thing up there? He gave it. We can't let you go up there and look at him because he's kind of shy. He doesn't want to be attacked. But
Well, and again, the creating the image, right? He doesn't even have to interact, right? That he can be the one, like the AI can be the one that's interacting with humankind, right? They don't speak a language that we can understand, so they have this very smart AI that comes forth and interacts with all of our computer tech, right? It's able to, it's kind of like speaking of video games, right? Halo has this AI that's able to literally just walk along and walk into a computer and take it over.
Right.
It's this kind of holographic,
Make sure
sentient AI.
Make sure your iPhones are plugged in and connected to Wi-Fi for your mandatory update tonight.
I can see all of this stuff and again, it's funny that we're relating it and painting a picture through media that is very common for us today. Like it's going to be familiar because it's already going to have been in our consciousness through media, through movies, through music, through just the way that they're doing advertisement. I just saw something the other day, like everybody was all, about Project Bluebeam, right? They used to be all about Project Bluebeam. You know what the newest thing they're wanting to do is to project Coke cans and advertisements into the sky using this technology, holographic technology. Remember that the scriptures tell you, look up, the redemption draws near. It doesn't say look up and see a bag of Doritos, right? What are they covering up there? You know what I'm saying? They're not going to fake it. They already have a ship. They can just appear. But what are they doing? Like, what are they doing? We can probably, see it. I've heard there's a lot of different things like tech that people are using and seeing things float around in the sky using night vision and stuff.
Yeah.
So, they definitely are covering everything up, until they're ready to release it. And it's all going to be controlled and it's all going to fit. All the puzzles are going to line up perfectly and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard.
Yes. Yeah, especially think about how many countries around the earth that are not first world nations, and they still have lots of small tribal villages. Though, I mean, it's just going to be hands down deception. Like, they haven't had the preview of these conversations or anything close to this. Many of them don't even have a Bible, and it's just going to be hands down deception for those folks. Like, I pray the Father gets them. And see, this is why I'll be talking about in the 42 series. Father does send the antidote. He sends the 42 months of the testimony of the two witnesses. This is why they can't be killed. Their testimony is over. And then once it's finally over, the first beast kills them because they have been the first beast's antagonist for that entire 42 months. They are the ones saying, all this is BS. Here's the creator of heaven and earth. Do the ways of righteousness.
Yep.
Ignore the Antichrist. Ignore this guy trying to get you to worship him and his henchman, his high priest, the second beast. Who knows? Just I promise you, it's going to be. And the fact that they can't be killed and people try to kill them, it's going to stir. It's going to stir. People will talk about it, and the fact that they can drop plagues on any nation that they want. It's going to be like, and it's something else that makes me think about is, will they actually be able to heal people as well? Because that is consistent with all the prophets. I know in Revelation 11, it only mentions that they can do judgments against the nations that try to attack them. But what if good-hearted people are brought to them for healing? Like, that would be wild, like old school prophet days. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. It's gonna be a wild next 100 years, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people don't like that. They like to think it's gonna happen like by 2027 or whatever. But I'm sorry, I think that the world has a lot of prepping to do before we get to the revelation of the sphere. And I just think that we've got a long ways to go
Yeah.
personally.
I do too. I'm looking because I follow along with what a lot of these companies are doing, and I realize what the movement does generationally. They have to slow you. You can't destroy a mountain by just blowing it up, right? You chip away at it one
Yeah.
generation at a time. And I'm seeing that there's a lot of projections for advancement in technology and where our society is moving forward that are projected and must be done by 2030. I mean, it's across the board. I'm seeing it everything from transportation to the tech fields that I work in. They have goals by 2030. Nobody set this time for them. Like everybody is just coming to the same conclusion that things need to be done by 2030, which points to me that they got something going on in 2030, right? But then they still have a generation that has to be conditioned in this environment of this new society, and then they have full control. Like it's literally been a conditioning, an erosion of morals, of awareness, of I mean, just about everything that you can think of. They've slowly chipped away our freedoms, our idea of freedoms. I remember I listened to a guy that said we now have a generation of kids that are growing up right now that do not know what privacy is. There is no idea of privacy. These kids will take pictures of themselves in the bathroom. They will take pictures of the food that they're eating. They'll give people, strangers on the internet, their address. There's an Alexa in the house listening to everything they say, a telephone in their hand that's watching them. They have no concept of privacy whatsoever. It only took a generation or two. We had two or three generations ago that they fought for privacy and freedoms, and within two generations have given it all away. What do you think is going to look like in another two generations? It's definitely an erosion, and we're giving up our freedoms and our morals for convenience, for the sake of, well, it's easier for me, and all it's going to take is the advancement of science to where you don't have to work. That somebody's just going to pay you. Well, okay, cool. Across the world, we have an automated workforce. Nobody really has to work. We'll supply you with food. We'll supply you with housing, and you just follow our rules until those rules tell you to take the mark, and then they boot you from the society and say no more food for you. You become a pariah to society.
What's that called? What's that called in today's society? What would
UBI,
that?
universal basic income.
Does that sound familiar to like what it's been for a long time, or like back in the day, or is that a new concept and you guys spinning?
Oh, I mean, like you mean like the communist ideology, or
Well,
Yes.
I'm always wondering how they're going to include UBI with actual social credit scoring, because the idea that you can convince a generation of kids they don't have to actually do anything during the day, they're going to do something. It's just, what are they going to do has to be controlled now. And I think that's where the social credit score comes in. And if it turns into, all right, we don't want you to work a job, we don't want you to be dependent on a job, but we're going to incentivize you to do things that propagate the narrative at home, online, or whatever, through the computer or whatnot, or do protesting, or who knows, who knows what they spin it into. Because they've got to be able to, they can't just, even though there's lots of politicians pushing for UBI because it's the ultimate communist wet dream, it doesn't make any sense to reality of what then. So even if you had the money to make it work, which it financially would never work, but even if you had the money to make it work, what actually do you think these people will be doing all day? That's the problem.
well,
No one
I
actually
think,
gets.
again, to come more modern media. I think Ready Player One kind of spelled that out.
That's what I was
Is
getting at.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll give virtual currency to do virtual things in virtual reality, and it doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
So they make
And
everything
they'll
up.
send you, they'll government DoorDash you your food and toilet paper for the day, as long as you're good online, didn't tick anyone off, didn't go against the narrative, and did what, so you still have a job. Babylon has always had a slave force. You can't get away from that fact. So they just have to convince you that you're not a slave, but even the slaves back in the day, there was finances that had to pay for the slaves to stay alive. So like, just to think that you don't have to work and the government's going to give you a check every month, you're a slave.
Hmm.
You're a slave. So now they coerce slaves to do what's in their best interest, whether it's through the whip or through social credit scoring. So it's like, it's just, yeah, we just got to get the word out, brothers, because the younger generation is falling hook, line, and sinker for this.
Oh yeah.
and if we don't have the right ways to explain it to them and to show them that this is against their nature, against the created nature within them. You know, it's in our nature to work and be productive. It's good for our heart, our mind, our social, whole social society. Like we cannot just be on video games all day. That's a huge trap to the younger generation. I'm dealing with, with my son right now. It's just like trying to
That is mine
inspire
too.
him about the greater things in life so that he realizes there's more. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I was a kid, I played video games too. I loved them. I mean, I was a menace at Tekken. My friends didn't like me when it came to playing Tekken, but I
Game-
grew out of that at some point. Like I realized I needed a job and I want to have a family and a life and all that stuff. And so, but that was because at the time society still encouraged you to grow out of it. Right now, they're encouraging you to stay in it, stay plugged in, stay jacked in.
And that's
stay,
gaming has changed too since we were growing up, and even just
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, when I was in competitive gaming and stuff. The way that things like Fortnite are designed now is you're taking real currency and you're spending it in game. Like my son has spent, he doesn't even play the game anymore, but he had probably spent hundreds of dollars, from doing chores and stuff to buy these beat bucks in the game to buy something that you can't tangibly own, right? But it put it in in the thought process of his mind that you can take hard labor work, put it into something digital, and you own something even though you own absolutely nothing. At
That's
least
right.
when I was growing up playing video games, I realized it was, pixels on a screen. It was not another part of reality. They have crossed reality into the digital, and you are working to buy video games to live in a virtual world and own virtual materials. And it's very interesting how they slyly slip that in within a generation. So, and then it won't be very hard for them to take that
Because
generation and move them forward into what we were just talking about.
it's because there's one for everybody. Like it doesn't matter like who you are, like what you like. Like there is something that fits the bill for you. That whether it was Candy Crush, whether it was you know, Minecraft, or whatever it was. Like there was something for not just the young boys. There was something for the young girls. There was something for the dads. There's something for the moms. Like whatever like that person needed to escape, escapism into something else that lets your mind do, menial work that you still had some amount of investment into it. It's pick your flavor and run with it. So I think that was the transition that I saw in that world, is that it went from okay, kids, young boys 5 to 15 were the target audience. Then it just opened up to everybody, absolutely everybody. There was something for them. So
No,
it
I like that concept in Player One where they had all of these game characters from all of the different game universes, and you just got to do whatever you want. If you like racing, there's a whole racing worlds. If you like shoot 'em ups, there's a whole first person shooters, and you could pick whatever character you want, customize it, get a cool car, whatever. Who would not want to live in? I mean, when you're forced into a situation of a world where you're living in basically a trailer stacked on top of another trailer, there is no actual like luxury living for you. You're the lowest of the lower class. You're barely surviving on what somebody else, the government is giving you. And what do? You live lavishly in a virtual world that, you can control and do. Again, with everything the enemy does, it is an illusion of freedom that you can do whatever you want online, but you just have to live in this box and follow all these rules, or you lose the option to have any of it. You know what I mean? So
Have you
the
guys-
freedom is in the game. It's not in the reality.
Yeah, because they want to entice you within the game to earn enough to have a lavish luxury life outside the game as well, which is just the carrot in front of the slave, But have you guys seen there's a new show out, I think it's on Amazon Prime.
I know which one you're talking about. My mom just told me about it. I saw I haven't got to watch it yet. I've been wanting to. But
It's got like a blonde girl.
Mhm.
She's like the star, and they basically have to play for money to make their bills. They got to play immersive, interactive games like metaverse style games.
yeah.
And but when they go into the metaverse and they look at at least you can see this on the trailer, like they have the city that they're interacting in this fake VR world, and he's got these massive Greek statues that are like the size of a 300-story building littered around London. And this was supposed to be almost 70 years in the future. And so she's playing in a VR world that's in the future, and it's supposed to be her inside a real Android style body in the future. And in the backdrop of this,
seeing those things that are actually there
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Karen
so
said
it
she just
combines the
watched it.
transhumanism, it combines the automaton, it combines the uploading the consciousness to a robot with living in a society that is now completely controlled by people that are worshiping the ancient Greek gods. 70 years down the road. So there's so many. My wife has been telling me for pretty much since I started the Investigating Babylon series last year. She was telling me, you just need to do like a separate show just on all the media and video game clips that has all this stuff layered in it, you know, because there's hundreds of them. It's for decades. It's crazy.
The movie's called Peripheral on Amazon Prime. I just
Peripheral. That's what it was called.
Yeah, I would love to do. I mean, I want to do the same thing with music, like all of the amount of lyrics and stuff. Because being a DJ for years, all the stuff that I heard, and then like as God, you know, took me through my walk, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are talking about like rituals and songs and, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. But I mean, yeah, this is kind of what's so funny to like. It's not really funny. It's actually kind of depressing that the secular prophets seem to be more accurate with what is coming up than what I see in prophecy in modern Christianity. Like people have these vain imaginations and these things that like, you know, like all the people that were, you know, I get people get caught up in stuff, but they were touting the whole QAnon thing, all these, you know, Christian prophets. And I looked at it and I'm like, I could see right through it. I'm like, why does not other people see what I see with this kind of stuff, you know? But you watch secular, you know, it's because like it's part of their process. Just like God says, I don't do anything without letting my prophets know. They have the same rules on their side. They have to get into the consciousness of mankind, and then we perpetuate it through the words we speak, through our consciousness, through like the ability to adapt our reality, like in the actions that we do and the thought process that we do and in our subconscious. And it's interesting because they put all of this stuff out there in movies, and then it ends up coming to fruition. It's just like seeing Gene Roddenberry, where he in the 60s and 70s was creating flip phones and flat screen TVs. You can say, you can argue chicken or egg. Was he inspired, or did people get inspired to build the devices from his movies? Either way, the product came, you know, regardless of how you look at it, right? So, you know, they use these muses that are trying to perpetuate this in-game Babylon society, and they use it through media and consciousness to get people to like this stuff, love this stuff, and want to see it come to fruition. I'm still mad that I grew up in the 80s and there's still no hoverboards or flying cars, because I tried to like think that into, you know, into existence. I wanted a hoverboard from, you know, Back to the Future for so many years, and we're, you know, in 2020 and I still don't have one. So I'm kind of mad about that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that what's fascinating to me is that a lot of people don't realize this, but the you guys ever heard the Oracle at Delphi from ancient Greece? So that was attributed to Apollo for most of history, but what people don't know was actually a cult that was attributed to a serpent cult before Apollo took it over. But Apollo made it famous for being the priesthood that was there. They were famous for prophecy. And I agree with you. I think that modern day predictive programming is their version of prophecy. And I think that they've never had the gift of prophecy. I think they've always just made their prophecies to be a false mimic of the creator's true prophecy, right? So imagine being in the days of, you know, Elijah, and Elijah steps up and he makes a prophecy about something, and then that's probably a bad example because of Elijah's context, but Daniel. So imagine Daniel makes a prophecy about what's going to happen, and then some of the other, false priests of Babylon hear this, and they're like, well, we got prophecies too, and ours come true as well. We can see the future as well. But in reality, it's just they make it happen because, again, all these nations are colliding and coalescing. So how easy would it be for them to say, oh, in 1 year's time, Babylon will be going into war with the Mongols, and then what do you know? They do a new military campaign to go into war with the Mongols because there was some strategic interest they needed for domination over there. You know what I'm saying? They tell all the people, oh my gosh, the priests of Babylon, they prophesied this last year. Oh my goodness. It's written down in their records. Look at their edict. It's prophesied. Like, I mean, it's so easy for them. But yeah, that was what the Oracle of Delphi was famous for, prophecy attributed to Apollo. So
Doesn't that almost like feed into their hubris? Is that I can prophesy something and then I have the power and the money and the influence to make it come to fruition? Like it's almost
yeah,
like
that
it,
manifestation speak. Yeah.
right,
Yeah, the secret basically that Oprah talked about, right?
right.
Which is, yeah, it's so I guess what I'm saying is it's just advanced manipulation because they have the power to make the circumstances fit the prophecy, whereas the Father just actually knows the end from the beginning. You
Right,
know what I'm
right.
saying? Isaiah 42:10. So
But
it's a big difference.
I think that's where my mind goes, because when we look at the understanding of what a true prophet in the creator's kingdom is supposed to look like, is someone that's points back to the beginning, points back to what the instructions were originally from the Father, not always some forward thinking thing. I understand that there was things that you know, times, very specific times where the Father used the prophets to make it known to Israel and to the nations what was declared, on certain topics and whatnot. Um, but in the majority, and once again, like I think Elijah is a perfect example of that context, where it was not always pointing forward to what was going to be happening, but like, hey, these are the examples of what have happened in the past when you did not do what you're supposed to be doing, and calling people back to repentance and calling people back to the instructions of the Father, which is where modern prophecy in the Christian church today falls drastically short, because they've lost what that's supposed to be. They're all forward thinking, like the enemy's camp. They're all focusing on trying to tell you something that's going to come to fruition, or come in the future, as opposed to pointing you back to the beginning, that the Father already declared the end from the beginning. And we should probably go back and check what the beginning has to say about what we're supposed to be doing to get there. So anyways, that's my
How
thoughts.
many times did Jesus say, like, as in the days of, or much like, like you will get a sign and your sign will be of the time of Jonah, right? Like he's pointing us back to the other story. I mean, like I love that little picture of where it's scripture laid out in a graph, and it has all the times that the scripture references itself inside of the scripture. It's like, they say that scripture is 90% prophecy. Like
Mhm.
it's literally telling in story, and like if you broke down every story, it has some painted picture or some type and shadow of the Messiah and his coming. So yeah, what the enemy can't create anything new, and he's not omnipotent. Like he does not know the end from the beginning. So the best
Yeah.
that he can do is he knows man, and he knows how we act in the flesh. So he can predict how men are going to. This is the same thing that the D-Wave computer can do now. Is it can literally make a map of the entire world of people, the sheeple out on the earth, and if you follow in your fleshly ways, it can predict you with a 99.9.1667778% accuracy, or whatever it was. Like, because when we follow in the flesh, we are very predictable. We do the exact same things over and over and over. And the adversary has seen us for thousands of years do the exact same thing over and over and over. So what does God
Pretty
do?
in-depth case study.
Right, right. So what does God do? It says, deny your flesh and pick up your cross and follow me, right? Let the Holy Spirit guide you, not your flesh. Then you become unpredictable to the enemy. You fall outside of his radar. So this is why it's so important not to be involved in your flesh and to deny your flesh, because the enemy can predict what you're going to do. If he knows that you're following in the flesh, well, then he can set that one car up to hit you as you're driving down the road, or whatever the case may be. He can't tell your future, but if you follow him in the flesh, it becomes very predictable which way the sheep walks, and the wolf is going to come get it. So, that's kind of my final 2 cents on this. Sean, did you want to have anything else you wanted to add? I know we're over like 2 hours, and I told you I didn't want to keep you too long. I know you just got back from both of you guys did back from that trip, and all of us are losing our voice. I did a training class all day today, and everybody's coughing and hacking, so I feel bad. But I thank you for your time and everything, and Daniel for coming on. I know you've been busy. We've all been like super overloaded. So I appreciate you guys getting together and we having this, this little Kingdom Crew moment as we're all hanging out and getting to talk about this. But yeah, Sean, do you have anything else you want to add to close out or to capstone this whole talk or whatever that we're talking about Nimrod?
Not really. We'll be talking about a lot of it in greater depth starting November 3rd, the big episode 1 for our 42 series, which is a continuation of the Investigating Babylon series. And then I've got yeah, that's about it. Make sure you download the app so that you can be notified and you don't miss when we start the new series.
Yeah, and guys, it's really easy to get the app. It is free. You go into your Android or Play Store and just type in Kingdom in Context. It'll be the first thing that pops up. You'll see the KIC on there, and download it and have fun with it, and just hang on for the updates because we're looking forward to all that. So we appreciate it again, Sean.